Out of the gates and ready to go. Hot Mike with Huntley Withrow underway on this Wednesday edition. Glad you're with us across the OutKick network as we broadcast live from 6th and Peabody with EA Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Chad, we always say it's a jam-packed show. It definitely is today. Walker Jones, who testified before Congress Tuesday and represented the Collective Association, and he runs the Grove Collective for Ole Miss. He joins us in about 20 minutes. We'll recap what he had to say, what lawmakers were asking him, and what he heard from NCAA President Charlie Baker and others while he was on Capitol Hill. Interested to get his take there. Bobby Carpenter returns this week. He's on the show, of course, the topic, Ohio State and Penn State for the former Buckeye. That's coming up later this hour as well. Clay Travis, founder of OutKick, each and every Wednesday. That'll be in hour number 2. Plus, later in the show, Danny Cannell and Kurt Schilling back on the show as we are on the path, a fast one, by the way, to the World Series. Chad, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Hutton. Thrilled to be here. Going to be a fun show today. Plenty to get into. Can't wait to talk a little NIL and collectives with our friend from Oxford coming up.
Chad, Kyler Murray is apparently back at practice for Arizona, quarterback there who's recovering from the ACL. So they've started that clock for the timetable. Could also be because the trade deadline's coming up in 2 weeks. We'll see what happens with the Cardinals quarterback. We've got Jalen Ramsey, who's back at practice for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And Trevor Lawrence is optimistic that he's going to play tomorrow night, despite the knee injury that he suffered late in the game this past week against Indianapolis. The same cannot be said for Deshaun Watson. Browns quarterback spoke with reporters today after not practicing, and he hasn't practiced since September 22nd, that he is, it's a pain tolerance issue, more or less, because it is a rotator cuff issue for Watson on his throwing shoulder. He says he's not able to put a timetable for his return. Went on to say that his return is up in the air. This coming from the same quarterback that 3 weeks ago now, said he was going to play. Since then, they've had a bye week, and he's missed 2 starts. The Browns, though, continue to scratch and claw defensively. They got the win last week. Now they're on the road against Indianapolis, potentially yet again with quarterback P.J. Walker at the helm of the Browns offense. Chad, this is the storyline that will pick up in great detail from inside the locker room if Walker, who didn't lose the game for Cleveland a week ago, ends up being the detriment to another great defensive effort for the Cleveland Browns. Then it becomes, okay, if it's just a pain tolerance issue, and by the way, he was cleared to play against Baltimore and chose not to, and now he's continuing to not practice yet again. It's going down a road that, to me, will eventually scream the fact that the veteran quarterback with the guaranteed contract isn't giving everything he's got to play despite the pain. He can play through it. The Browns have already told us that. They cleared him, choosing not to, and you've got the veterans on the defensive side especially that are going to be very disgruntled behind the scenes. I can only imagine. If this continues, this has now expanded the time frame past what was originally thought to be a short on the sideline, short stint on the sideline, and it's turned into much more than that.
It's a terrible look, whatever's happening there in Cleveland. And Tyler Castle, our resident Browns fan here,
right,
even sent us in a group text earlier that he'd prefer Justin Fields at this point to Deshaun Watson. That's awfully telling, given Justin Fields' play so far in Chicago. Now he's citing that in Cleveland it would have been a different story for Fields than it has been. I say that to say that, to me, when I read the text, I didn't think that was completely outrageous. And who would have thought that the last time that Deshaun Watson was playing for the Houston Texans, before he took 2 years off, 1, to pout over the organization, 2, to face a number of allegations about sexual assault, only to then parlay that into the first fully guaranteed contract for a quarterback for a player in NFL history. And he has completely laid an egg since that point forward. And now not only has his play not been worthy of a guy making guaranteed money the way he is, his attitude, his want to, his desire to help his teammates and be a leader on the field is being questioned. Whether it's fully warranted or not, that is the perception right now. This is an injury that either he could have played through or gotten through quicker. That is the perception of Deshaun Watson. It's not good. And Hutton, you're right. I mean, P.J. Walker just did enough to not lose the game with that great defense. But he's a part of a win over the San Francisco 49ers, who were unbeaten coming into that game. So how much longer is this going to go on? And as the weeks pile up, whether the Browns win or lose, what is that going to do to the locker room in their response to Deshaun Watson and how they respond to him whenever he comes back?
Yeah, and I mean, he threw 2 picks a week ago. But again, like the defense responded in that game. They had plenty of penalties and flags that went in their favor. They still won that game. You're right. They handed Brock Purdy his first loss as a starter for San Francisco in the regular season. The quotes from, you got Stefanski saying that he's improving each day, but he's still day to day. That's coming from the Browns head coach. And Watson saying it just depends on the process of the medical staff and the treatment, the rehab that we're doing day to day. So it's up in the air for sure. Asking if he had a chance to join the Browns for the upcoming trip to Indy in Week 7. So the saga continues.
Look, and maybe Deshaun Watson completely changes the narrative. I think back to The Last Dance with Scottie Pippen, right? He was upset about his contract, totally the opposite situation, where he wasn't getting paid enough. He decided to have his back surgery or his surgery right before the season to screw over the Bulls. Michael Jordan didn't like it, said Scottie was being selfish, came back to redeem himself by fighting through back spasms and playing a great clinching game against the Utah Jazz. Maybe Deshaun Watson's story ends with him battling through some injury and leading the Browns to a playoff win, and the city of Cleveland and all of Northeast Ohio rejoices in the way the guy plays the game in the end. I don't see that happening right now. I have no evidence to think that's going to be the case. Right now, Deshaun Watson is proving every negative stereotype about the spoiled, pampered athlete that gets the guaranteed bag and then quits. That's what it looks like right now. I hope that changes for the sake of a lot of people, Browns fans first and foremost in this, but that's what he's proving. Whenever an owner or anyone wants to argue it, they're going to point to Deshaun Watson, and I don't think that's right. Because I don't think every quarterback in the NFL has Deshaun Watson's mentality right now. I think most would play through this. Most would try to get back on the field. But that's the negative stereotype that he's playing right into at this point in time.
Yeah, Trevor Lawrence is saying that he's optimistic he can play on a short week after having that knee issue on Sunday. We certainly know about Burrow and others. It's just it's peculiar, Chad. I don't disagree with what you're saying about the mentality of Deshaun Watson. But he's doing this after his best performance as a Cleveland Brown quarterback. This was right after the Week 3 beatdown of the Tennessee Titans.
27-3.
And it was Watson that went off in that game. And it was, he opened up the offense a bit whenever Chubb got hurt early in the season. So I don't know or understand what has happened behind the scenes. But what once was a shoulder contusion is now the rotator cuff issue. But there's not much detail to it other than that, other than a pain tolerance, which was always the case, because it would be the shoulder contusion that would also be a pain tolerance problem for him. He says he's not wanting to hurt the team, and to this point, he hasn't because of the defense. But when the offense doesn't pick up the pace, when you have to go get points and a win late, when it's 3-3 in the fourth quarter, with 2 great defenses, that's when it's going to come to the surface and bubble up. They've got the Colts this week. They're on the road there in Indy. They're on the road in Seattle for Week 8. Week 9 puts them back home against the Arizona Cardinals before a visit to Baltimore on November the 5th. That's their next 4 games. And I only look at the next month or so because he says not to put a timetable on it. Well, this stretch coming up looks like 3 straight defensive battles, and then a massive back-to-back series against the Ravens and Steelers within the AFC North, which is wide open. and very competitive. It's the only division right now that's 500 or better for every team. Watson needs to be a part of that. The storyline can certainly change, but the detail here is so vague that it's open for speculation.
Yeah, it's winning cures all would be the saying to apply to most anything. This is a situation where winning doesn't cure anything for Deshaun Watson, and I don't really know what hurts him worse. Browns continue to be successful with the new quarterback and winning games, or Browns dropping games while he doesn't come back,
Right.
and then the locker room and the fan base turning on him more and more. The fan base will be fine and happy if they continue to play like they did on Sunday against the 49ers and win games, but I don't know that either. It's a difficult spot for Watson because neither one of those scenarios helps him either with the locker room or with the fan base. It's just the best of two evils that you're picking from for him personally.
You know
what
what
needs to happen is he needs to come back and play like he did against the Titans in more games, and then everything will be forgiven.
You know what else would be a massive storyline right now? It would be if Joshua Dobbs wasn't traded right before the season started, because that guy could actually help the team win. Coming up, we've got Walker Jones, who's going to join us. Chad, he was on Capitol Hill yesterday testifying on behalf of the Collective Association, which he and 30 other programs are a part of, collectives across the country. He runs the Grove Collective for Ole Miss. And I bring him up because, of course, there were certain talking heads, including Charlie Baker and others, that wanted to push Title IX and inequity, saying that it's totally out of hand. There needs to be transparency, and there needs to be guidelines enforced on the NCAA's behalf, but they need federal help in order to do that. They need lawmakers to make a law in order to curtail where we're headed for name, image, and likeness. Where we're headed is a next television contract for the college football playoff with a boatload of money. And they're trying to cut that off with a cap right now, where we went over it yesterday. 9% of the average Power 5 athletic budget goes to the players for student aid. The others, vast majority of the percentage, 42 to 45%, goes to coaches' salaries, staff, administration, and buyouts for previous coaches. I point all this out because you got the Power 5 decision makers and the big college football decision makers. They are seeing dollar signs today. And that's because Netflix is getting into the sports streaming realm. They're finally dipping the toe in the water, and it's not just because they're promoting F1 or promoting certain PGA Tour golfers. It's more than that. They've already admitted that this is their foray into what could be live streaming of sports on Netflix. We've already seen it from Amazon. We've already seen it from Apple. Now Netflix is going to do it with the golf event that will feature PGA Tour members and F1 stars leading up to the Las Vegas Grand Prix. I bring this up because Netflix, Apple, and Amazon, that's where the next bucket load of money is going to come from. ESPN's already ponied up. We've seen the deals with CBS and Fox and NBC for the Big Ten, for the Big 12, and, of course, Notre Dame on their own. ACC is stuck where they are. Realignment has happened. More dollars are coming into this through the streamers, through the online distribution. And if you already got Amazon, who's paying $1 billion to the NFL for Thursday Night Football, they're going to also dive in on the college football playoff. That agreement, that deal, will be up in 2 years. It's a 2-year agreement for the 12-team playoff format. After that, Chad, it is wide open. And that's where we see, I think, the branch and the break between the haves and the have-nots. And the fact that Netflix is also going to be in the mix now, I don't think they're hiding that. It's college football or the NBA that are going to benefit the most from this, because the NFL is already getting their billions, and now college football is about to. So
here would be my question with this, Hutton. And and this is a bigger question that needs more time to sift through. Senator Tommy Tuberville came on the show yesterday, and he said there needs to be a revenue share. Take a percentage, give it to them. But he said it needs to go to every athlete. Man, woman, everyone on campus, evenly distributed, that all the money has to go to every athlete. And I'm thinking, man, that's kind of like a socialist structure. Everyone gets the same amount, no matter what, no matter value, no matter television value, no matter how much they're bringing. Do we prefer that to a university by university decision structure on who gets what in terms of their student athletes based on value to the university, based on sport? And then what Pandora's box will we open up at that point when the quarterback of the football team is getting checks from the university as part of their ratio of television money, and the star women's volleyball player is getting a check for $350 compared to whatever astronomical amount of money the quarterback is getting? Just something I've been thinking about, that even if that happens, that's still not going to look fair when the rowing team gets the same amount as the defensive line for a Big Ten team.
Well, they'll get the initial payout in that structure, but you know what's not going to happen? A booster or a client, an advertiser saying, hey, we want the quarterback to represent us. You think the university is going to turn that away?
Collective.
No.
It's still going to be the same thing. Collectives and schools fighting over top athletes and top sports with money.
We'll discuss more with Walker Jones. He's up next. And by the way, for the Collective Association, they're open to regulation.
Now, yesterday, in the wake of the Trevor Bauer bombshell outing his accuser as a disgusting liar, I made the call to end the Me Too movement. And today, I'm going to continue making that case. What was once born as a push to protect real victims has, in many cases, just like we saw with Bauer, turned into an awful manipulation tactic by immoral women to strip men of their power. And we, as a society, continue to just let it happen. Time and time again, it seems. Such also, as we have seen in the past, the cases of Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, who was on the brink of not being confirmed after being accused of sexual assault stemming from his college years. There was the 3 members of the Duke lacrosse team who were accused of raping a stripper at a party, and former Bills punter Matt Araiza, who was accused of gang rape. These are just 3 examples, all of which were proved to be untrue accusations. Men have been put through absolute torture. They have had massive opportunities stolen from them. Their lives, livelihoods, and reputations devastated solely because they were Me Too'd. Meaning a woman made a claim and it was accepted as a fact, even though in all of these cases, it was nothing but a lie. The believe all women era, no matter what, must end right now. Even Matt Araiza, who was still out of a job in the NFL, realizes the threat of it. Here's what he said after being released from the Bills following his untrue accusations.
It's just the climate of how things are now. Accusations bring so much hate to anyone who decides to stand by the accuser that they were kind of forced to cut me from the team.
Now, don't get me wrong. If you are a true victim, I implore you to find the courage to come forward under any and all circumstances. However, if the behavior with the accused man was consensual, let's say, if there is an ulterior motive, maybe a money grab, a play for attention, then please spare us. Don't take the legs out from under real victims who now will no doubt have become discredited because of stunts like the ones I just mentioned. Real victims should be absolutely furious. Just because a woman says something does not mean it should be assumed as fact. And to everyone out there, be careful. Save those receipts. Finally, I also see no reason to continue a movement to protect women when women don't even take the steps to protect themselves anymore. For example, self-proclaimed feminists all over the country are in favor of having biological men in their bathrooms, in their locker rooms, in their sorority houses, in their safe spaces. And even those who aren't outwardly in favor still neglect to stand up against things like this, despite the integration causing an inherent danger for all women. Look how Virginia dad Scott Smith was treated after he confronted the Loudoun County School Board in Virginia after his 15-year-old daughter was the victim of a brutal sexual assault by a transgender in a female bathroom. So how is this dad going to be attacked when he was standing up for his underage daughter? I don't understand it. Where is the concern for this girl's safety? Isn't this a Me Too concern considering she was sexually assaulted? No, it's not. And that is the problem right here, because you can't pick and choose which girls and women get protection under this awareness campaign. And on the flip side, who can be classified as an assailant?
Sixth and Peabody, our location with EHA Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Top Mike with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick network. About to be joined by Walker Jones, who testified before Congress yesterday for the 10th hearing on Capitol Hill for the future of college sports and name, image, likeness. I think he's certainly on behalf of the Collective Association, which he's a part of, is the Grove Collective at Ole Miss.
One of the top dogs.
Yeah, one of them, yeah, for sure. He changed the narrative of the perception of some of the lawmakers on Capitol Hill that believe that collectives are not for the policies that would do away with state regulation and make it more federal across the country. College sports.
Yeah, we're about to be joined by him here momentarily. It's quite the battle that's going on between collective, NCAA, student athletes, coaches, administrators, everyone.
Sure.
Again, 6th the Peabody, our location with EHA Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. We say hello right now to Walker Jones, who is back from Capitol Hill and back hard at it to work with the Grove Collective. Walker, thanks for the time, man.
Thanks, guys. Happy to join you.
How many lawmakers that you sat in front of yesterday do you think believed that collectives as a whole are not for the regulations that are being pushed by the NCAA and others right now? The thought would be you prefer it state to state instead of the entire country being under the same guideline and policy.
Well, look, I think that's a big point of discussion that we had yesterday, and again, it's a nuanced question when you think about the patchwork of laws that are out there. I mean, right now, it's working state by state, and we're fine with it being state by state because it's worked. It's worked well for us in Mississippi. It's worked well for others. We don't see the epidemic of it yet on a national scale, but I think there is a little bit of a worry that if you have, if every state ends up having varying state statutes, do you run into some inequities there and some competitive disadvantages? And, there's a lot of states too that still don't have NIL laws. And so, a state like Georgia doesn't have an NIL statute. Utah doesn't have an NIL statute. So there's a lot of them that still don't have them. And so I think that's probably the biggest challenge, is that you've got three buckets of state statutes that were drafted at the infant stages of NIL when it first came to be in 2021. You have ones that have been amended since then to be more favorable. And then you have the other states who haven't done anything. So it's a little bit of a, you sometimes you have advantages by geography. And I think that's probably the big discussion. I think from a collective standpoint, we don't think that's the biggest problem right now. And but we certainly understand why others would be concerned by that. And I think we stand ready to listen. And the point about the collectives is we can provide the real feedback to all these stakeholders so they can make the best decisions. So and be most informed when determining, is there a national standard or not?
NCAA President Charlie Baker was also there. His first public sit down and public comments in person with lawmakers. And he was pushing many things, as others were, about trying to make it so that athletes cannot be classified as employees. Title IX was brought up quite a bit. Yeah. Is the real issue that right now, athletes are getting roughly 9% of the athletic budget, and they want to cap it at that instead of allowing an NFL system that gets 49.5% of the media rights deals that are going much higher. 2007, the SEC distributed $10 million per school, and it's expected, it's projected that in 2029 it could be as high as $105 million per university. That's a big jump, of course, but 9% would be 9%, not 49.5%.
Correct. Yeah. And again, I think what you're seeing is some of these traditional stakeholders that have had control over all this for decades, now having to deal with change and loss of control, really. You heard Senator Kennedy from Louisiana kind of call Charlie Baker out on that yesterday. Like, so we're redistributing money and the world's going to tilt off its axis now, So, I think there's concern that, they don't have control over it, and, it's chaos and it's the wild, wild west. And look, some of that may have been true in the first 2 years, even 8 to 12 months ago, some of that may have been true. But my point yesterday to them was, look, we're just now going into year 3, and there are growing pains with any fair market model out there. And we need to continue to evaluate this thing and let it self-govern itself a little bit. Like we're seeing at the collective level with the athletes, a little bit of a reset and a revision back to the mean in some of these sports. And we're also seeing a huge growth in female NIL deals and non-revenue deals as well, which is a good thing. So again, I just don't buy into the doom and gloom and, oh my gosh, if we don't cap this thing, it's going to destroy college athletics. A lot of those same people 3 years ago said, if this Supreme Court case gets passed, it's going to kill college athletics. Well, obviously we see it here today. That's not happening. Viewership is at an all-time high. There's more talent distribution. So parity is at an all-time high right now. And so, the overall, in my perspective and our perspective on the collective side, was college athletics is in a pretty good spot, and it's really healthy. And our athletes are solving for socioeconomic problems. They're staying in school longer. They're able to get themselves into a better situation. And again, going into year 3, we're starting to see that self-governance a little bit, where athletes don't see the portal as the pot of gold on the other side that they thought it was maybe a year ago. And we're seeing some of the valuations come back down. We're seeing more distribution of the money. So again, I just think we need to give the market a chance to kind of evolve, just like any free market model that has growing pains. But my gosh, man, the overwhelming impact of NIL has been incredibly positive.
Walker Jones is the executive director of the Grove Collective for the University of Mississippi.
Walker, what percentage of lawmakers you've come across do you feel like actually understand what it is that a collective does?
Yeah, I don't think it's very high. I hope yesterday helped. That was one of the purposes that we were saying we wanted to be involved in one of these hearings. There had been 9 of them. No collective had been involved in them. Over 80% of the money in NIL is going through collectives. We're at the ground level with the athletes, the agents, the parents, the coaches. We kind of know what's happening. We're at that point of intersection. So that was the point yesterday to your question of, look, let me define for you what a collective is today. And I said that the Big Ten commissioner kind of took a shot at us yesterday about his perception of collectives. And I just said, look, I think that's an outdated opinion and perception. I think that may have been true 12 months ago, but collectives now, much like the Grove Collective, are being run with a full-time staff, business professionals with infrastructure, resources, and tools. And it's not just about writing a check anymore. I think that may have been the original cause of collectives, but it certainly isn't now, especially the ones that are functioning at a high level. So to your question, I think yesterday we made some headway in trying to dispel some of the notion that we're the boogeyman and we're doing more harm than good. But I still think the vast majority of people out there own those traditional stakeholder sides, look at us like, I don't know if you're friend or foe. And we're trying to tell them, hey, look, we want to be productive to this whole conversation. And oh, by the way, the majority of the athletes in the commerce is going through us. So you might as well work with us.
Yeah, and I know there's been an effort to sort of turn the collectives into another collective, and for there to be some solidarity amongst collectives, even though each individual collective works with a different university. Just right. Hypothetical, if there is a government entity or the NCAA that decides to go after one collective that's in there. Is this a united front where all the collectives are working together to try to solve issues like that? Once the NCAA, and we know it's going to happen, the NCAA decides to launch an investigation or make claims about one of you, do all of you get involved?
I think there'll be a little bit of a rallying around whoever that group is, and you know, I was there not only representing Ole Miss and our collective, but 25 other Power Five collectives that have come together to form this trade association for the very reason of, you know, giving us strength in numbers, giving us a unified front, a voice on the legislative conversation, and also too, sharing best practices, you know, and we heard a little bit yesterday about, oh, this is just pay for play. It's just pay for play. Look, is there an element of pay for play in NIL? Of course there is, but there was pay for play way before NIL, and collectives didn't bring about pay for play. I can assure you. We're at least now adding a lot of structure and transparency. We submit all our contracts to our universities for approval. We're talking to other collectives. If this was strictly pay for play, do you think I'd be working with Tennessee and Georgia and Alabama closely if we were trying to steal each other's players and cut each other's throats? You know, so, you know, the fact that we've got 25 Power Five collectives that have come together to create this unified collective voice, I think shows that we're trying to be additive and productive to this whole conversation. And yeah, I think if you know, if the NCAA wants to go after, you know, any of us, I think we all are confident in how we're doing business. And we will rally around each other because we do think we are doing far more good than negative. And, you know, our athletes trust us, they listen to us. And when there was nobody there, you know, collectives were born out of the ineptitude and inaction of the NCAA and universities. And we filled that void. And yeah, we were probably shadow organizations at first 18 months ago because they didn't know what to do. But now we figured out the game a little bit and we're running our business like a transparent, well-staffed, structured entity.
Mark Emmert didn't want to lead. He stepped back from that. How would you describe Charlie Baker as a leader, and is he capable of meeting in the middle here in your dealings with him?
Yeah, and look, he and I have had some bumped heads a little bit over the summer and yesterday. But I respect Governor Baker for raising his hand and jumping into a really untenable situation that he didn't create. You know, Mark Emmert and the NCAA for decades were inept and dismissive and would not change and didn't want to change, wouldn't listen to the athletes. And so I do have deference for Governor Baker in the sense that he has taken on a really tough job. He is trying his best to work, like I said, a very untenable situation, and trying to rebuild some trust when he doesn't have a lot. There's not a lot of goodwill or trust, you know, with our student athletes in the marketplace. So I do think, you know, that whether he and I may disagree on a few things and we've traded a few shots at each other, I stand ready, willing to work with him, to help him. I do have sympathy for the job that he has taken on, and I respect the fact that he took on a really tough job at a tough time. But I just want him. And it's like yesterday, it was funny after the hearing, he walked up to me and he said, "Man, you and I have a lot more in common than I thought." And I said, "Exactly." And we do, you know, now we have some differences and we don't believe in giving them an antitrust exemption or limited liability protection in some areas. And, you know, there's some areas that we don't think they should be involved in. And, but there is some points in commonality we have with him. And I, like I told him yesterday, we stand ready to help work with him. And again, my whole point was, look, I'll leave it to really smart people to determine some of these big topics and decisions that need to be made. But my role, our role, can be a source and a sounding board of tangible real-time information of what's really going on with the athletes, the agents, the commerce at the ground level. And we can give really good information so he and others can make the most informed decisions going forward. And I think if we do that, then we're playing a great role in serving a great service here. But again, you know, I respect what the challenge that he has and stand willing and ready to work with him.
So we had Senator Tuberville on yesterday, Walker, and I asked him this question. I'm going to ask you the same one. What does compromise look like on all sides of this? Because you know when you bring this issue up, it can be divisive and you can hear extremes on one side of, oh, the kids should never get paid, to, oh, this is the greatest thing to ever happen to sports ever, and it's never going to be any issue. What does compromise look like, and can we attain that compromise?
Well, look, it's great when you say Senator Tubble. I kind of chuckle at my former coach at Ole Miss
Yeah.
and now a senator, which I never thought I'd ever say that. But anyway, you can truly be anything you want to be in
We
life.
call him Coach too when he joins us, so we get it.
And I love Coach, and Coach has been great to me, and I love Coach, and I love his involvement in this conversation because I think he gives a great perspective due to his career, obviously. So I think compromise can come in various forms. I think that the one thing that I think I kept hearing from Congress in our meetings on Monday, we met with 12 different senators, and then in the hearing was, we really need to be careful about how much we want the congressional government, Congress and the federal government involved in collegiate athletics. You heard Ted Cruz say it yesterday. You probably don't want us determining what roughing the passer is or what the transfer portal is and things like that. And that's the one thing, and I told Coach Turtle that the one thing I don't love about his bill is the transfer portal stuff. Like, I philosophically don't disagree with what he's saying about the portal, but I don't think the federal government needs to be the one to fix the portal. I think that should be left to the commissioners, the conference commissioners, and the SEC, the Big 12, Big 10, and the NCAA. So I think compromise can come in various forms. I would say broadly that a light touch from the NCAA and some nudging in the right direction to the powers that be, who I really believe, and I say this out of respect, no disrespect to Governor Baker, the NCAA, I really think it's the conference commissioners. What was the Power Five, now the Power Four. I think Greg Sankey, Tony Petitti, Jim Phillips in the ACC, guys like that, I think they are the ones that could probably bring people together. They control all the revenue. They control a lot of the narrative, the competitive landscape from a national championship standpoint. And I really think if you just put this on the NCAA, you're going to have such a tough hill to climb by trying to give the NCAA teeth back across in a broad spectrum. Now, is there a role for the NCAA to play? Absolutely. But I really think conference-wide intervention on enforcement and legislation is probably the best path forward and the one that would be most amenable to the student athletes and all the other stakeholders in there. And I think, again, the federal government's role could be a light touch on maybe a broad federal standard, or maybe some protection, or like you heard Jack Swarbrick say, this new model of collective bargaining without employment. If we could figure out what that looks like, where there's a collective bargaining atmosphere that didn't create employment and create that new mechanism, which would probably take the federal government to give an exemption of employment, but create a collective bargaining atmosphere, that may be where we could find really good middle ground.
Walker Jones has joined us. A great conversation here, and here's hoping you'll join us again, maybe after the 11th hearing, maybe after the 22nd hearing.
Yeah, however many hearings it takes to get it done. Hopefully right. You can keep joining us.
Hey, guys, love the show. And look, I never thought I'd ever be sitting before Congress talking about NIL when I took this thing on 16 months ago. So we're in uncharted territory, and love your show and happy to come on anytime, guys.
Appreciate that, man.
You hopping on with us.
We'll reach back out. There's Walker Jones. Great insight there from the collective point of view, and plenty to discuss later in the show about the comments he had. I love his answer right there about compromise. Coming up, Bobby Carpenter joins us. He'll preview Ohio State, Penn State, get the Buckeyes' perspective from Bobby Carpenter, the Buckeye. That's next right here on Hot Mic with Hutton Withrow.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafty flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation. And pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Taste of Southern legend.
Our thanks to Walker Jones for joining us. 6th and Peabody location for Hot Mite with Hutton and Withrow, the home of Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Coming up, Clay Travis joins us in about 40 minutes from right now. A bit later, Danny Cannell, plus Kurt Schilling back on the show today. Can't wait for that. Back on the show right now, Bobby Carpenter joins us, former Ohio State Buckeye. And a massive week coming up. Kickoff between Ohio State and Penn State. Yeah, we've been waiting, Bobby, both for your return on the show and for this game preview. Can't wait to jump into it, man. How are you?
I'm doing well, gentlemen. It's been fun. It's been an exciting first half of the season, but now for Ohio State, finally getting to the meat of their conference schedule as they take on Penn State here, which, I'm a little disappointed. I'm not a huge fan of the noon kicks. I'd like it to be at least 3:30. I think that's a nice window. If you're on the road, you never really want to play at night, but I guess I'll trade that off. But noon is so early, guys, to get it going, especially for people on Central Time to kind of pull them in.
I know the top 3 in the Big Ten are really good. I just don't know the pecking order. And the schedule has led us to October and November to figure that out. And this is the first of that. What do you make of Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, in no particular order, and how much this game determines kind of the outlook for the conference moving towards Ohio State, Michigan later?
Well, this is the first of the matchups. So whoever loses this, should they be able to beat Michigan, depending on what happens in that third game, you may get into a tiebreak situation. And ironically enough, the tiebreaker for the Big Ten is their record against their Big Ten West opponents, or their Big Ten West opponents' record, rather. And so Penn State having beaten Iowa, and I think I don't believe they play Michigan this year, and they do not play Ohio State. Penn State, I think, would have the advantage if you got into a 3-way round robin situation.
That's crazy.
But it is because Iowa. Guys,
they do not play Michigan. You're right.
A team with no offense that somehow finds a way to win games. Incredible.
Guys, I went through this with Jacob Hester yesterday. Their next 4 games are at home. They just beat Wisconsin. There's a good chance that they're not going to lose a game the rest of the year. I mean, that's real. So they're going to probably be 11-1 and somehow be ranked like 18th behind a bunch of 2-loss teams. But that would determine it should it get to that round robin scenario, and that would mean they'd all have to beat each other. But this would be the first of it. So it's not, the complete end, because you would still have some control of your destiny should you get a little bit of help. But I don't think it's a place where either of these teams want to live.
I've said that, at least to me, James Franklin and the Nittany Lions, if they're going to climb the staircase and stop being the third team or the team that can disrupt whatever happens between Michigan and Ohio State, this is the year to do it in this college football landscape. Do you agree? And if so, does Penn State have what it needs to pull off the win on the road?
Well, it's a lot of people in Happy Valley have been talking, if not now, then when? This seems to be the year. Although you're playing a very good Ohio State squad, you're playing a very good Michigan squad. All teams are kind of different in how they're built. I mean, Michigan, we've seen what they've been the last couple of years. Really good up front on both sides of the line of scrimmage. Really good running game. J.J. McCarthy's improved. I think their offensive weapons have gotten a little better. Ohio State obviously has the elite weapons on the outside. Defense looks improved, but they have a younger quarterback and a guy who's a first-year and starter in Kyle McCord. And then Penn State, you look at what they have, got a really talented defensive front. I'm not sure if their secondary is as consistent as maybe a Michigan, a Notre Dame, as far as other teams that Ohio State has played. I think they have some more elite players, especially on the perimeter, on the edge of the defensive line. They can get after the pass rush. They have, for the quarterback, they're near the top in the country in sacks. But part of that is you're leading by a lot, but they can overwhelm you. The one thing that's unique, though, they'll lean into Singleton, they'll lean into Allen in their running game, and their young quarterback is pretty darn good, but they haven't really utilized his ability with Aller to push the ball down the field. He reminds me a lot of Josh Allen. He's a big kid, he's a strong kid, he moves fairly well. He looks a little, not maybe like the most fluid athlete, but he gobbles up yards. But he can throw it. But they just really haven't pushed the ball down the field. And I want to say they're near the bottom half of the Big Ten in yards per play, which means they really haven't had that many explosives. They've been very methodical with their drives, which I don't know if in these big games you can consistently drive against a good defense without having any big plays. I think it's just too hard.
Bobby, who is this game more important for personally, James Franklin or Ryan Day?
Wow, it's a good one. I think, Ryan Day gets fired up about a lot of things. I think people would probably be okay if he lost this one and beat Michigan. So I think that's ultimately more important. James Franklin, he's said a lot of things, but this would be big for him to get to this point because you look at last year, it's what they've done a lot. They've beat everybody but Ohio State and Michigan. And so that, becomes the question. This would be the first domino to fall for them, and I think that'd be pretty big for James Franklin.
Staying in the Big Ten, Bobby, I do want to ask you about Michigan and Jim Harbaugh's comments that J.J. McCarthy's on pace to be the greatest Wolverine quarterback of all time. And the stat he brought up was pretty crazy that 61% of the drives that he's started have ended in points so far. And that's the most impressive thing he can say about him. Obviously, Michigan also built around the run in many ways. What do you think about Jim Harbaugh's claim?
Well, I guess it's how you judge quarterbacks, and we have a million different ways. I don't know if wins are a quarterback statistic, but I do believe you want a quarterback who's a great leader, and I think Jim Harbaugh saw himself as that, and I believe he fancies J.J. McCarthy that. And the great leader is a guy that ends drives with points, preferably touchdowns. And if you're doing that, 61% of the time, and then you have to look at their touchdown percentage in the red zone and how that ultimately looks. That's the objective of any offense. We can talk about total yards and all of this and that, but the objective for the offense is to score the ball and not turn it over. And if you can do that at a high rate, which he's been pretty good taking care of the football. I think he had one game with 3 picks, but other than that, he's been very efficient this year. He's continued to get better. He's athletic, and you see him move the chains with his legs. He could maybe go down as the greatest quarterback. Everybody looks at Tom Brady, but Tom Brady wasn't great at Michigan. He was hanging on his job from Drew Henson most of the time, and he probably wasn't given the shot that he should have been. It's going to be tough to overcome. Brian Greasy won a national championship. They've had some really talented quarterbacks, but he's been to 2 playoffs. If he goes to a third and wins a national championship, I'd have to say that he might hold that mantle.
As you see the landscape now for the top contenders for the playoff, can the Big Ten get 2 teams in this year?
I think the Big Ten has 2 teams that are good enough. They may have 3. The reality is, though, you look around the conference, the ACC most likely will have a team that is worthy of getting in. It looks like Florida State, but North Carolina is undefeated. They're sitting there, I believe, at 12, and they won't play Florida State until the championship. You would think that the Big 12 champ will have a nice claim, and whether that's Texas having redemption against Oklahoma or Oklahoma running the table, if they do that, there's no way you're turning them down. You look at the SEC champ. I don't think that there's a way you wouldn't get them in. Now, maybe Georgia loses a game without Brock Bowers here over the next 6 weeks, and that could get a little squirrely. Maybe they lose to Alabama in the championship, but I don't think you're going to neglect a 1-loss Alabama champion, SEC champion who only lost to Texas. And then you look out west, and there's probably, you look at Oregon, you look at Washington. Utah still has a pathway there. Oregon State still has a pathway. And so there's a number of teams. And so maybe there's a lot of cannibalization that happens, but I don't know if there's going to be any conference this year who gets more than 1 team in. And that doesn't even count Notre Dame, who, if they would have beat Louisville, they would have a pretty strong claim coming in as potentially a 1-loss team should they run the table the rest of the way against Clemson and Duke. So to me at the top, this would have been the perfect year for the 12-team playoff to see, because I don't know if there would have been overwhelming odds for really any team as you watch on any given Saturday. And you're like, well, they looked pretty good, but then I remember them last week or 2 weeks ago or whatever it is. Every team, I think, has some warts this year.
Bobby, you look at Texas A&M's situation with Jimbo Fisher and the fact that Texas and Oklahoma are going to be moving into the SEC. Does that fact make it more urgent for A&M to make a move if this season continues to go down this path? Or does that make it more urgent to stay the course with Jimbo Fisher, given all the change and this programs around them that are obviously going to be competing with them for recruits now in the same conference?
It's really a great question. Jimbo, he's kind of been the ultimate tease. But they have the season during COVID where they went 10-1 or 9-2, whatever it was, and had a really good year. He almost beat Nick Saban this year, but they also lost to Miami. They've looked rough at times as well. They've had their opportunities. The question is, for Texas A&M, you're paying a lot of money now for a team just simply to play spoiler the rest of the year. And that's an expensive accessory package. I'd rather be buying the big engine than a sweet spoiler and whatever other accessories go on the outside. So they ultimately have some decisions they have to make. He's recruited really well, but I don't know if it obviously hasn't translated to the expectation of high level wins. Maybe they end up going 9-3 this year. Maybe they go 8-4. That's better than what they did last year. But when you're recruiting at that level, and then you're ultimately paying at that level, but not getting teams that are at least challenging in the West on a year in and year out basis, like that to me is where you've got to separate it. We can say as much as we want about LSU this year and how bad their defense is. I mean, there's still a one-loss team that's played some pretty darn good football. They just can't stop anybody. Like Jimbo, they just find a way to lose games. And it's unfortunate because I think that he's done a good job in the past. It's just that he hasn't got it figured out at A&M.
Yeah, there's a disconnect at some point there with him and the locker room and everything that's been going on. Now, what is it? 9 straight losses now, Chad? 8?
It's
on the
eight,
road?
It's 8 or 9. It's 2 seasons worth of games they haven't won on the road.
Yeah, and it could be going into 3 seasons because their next 2 road opponents, Ole Miss and LSU, doesn't look great for the Aggies.
It's like you mentioned, it's kind of – last year was a disaster. There's no other way to cut it, right? This year, I watched them Saturday against Tennessee. They've got really good talent. They've got great defensive line talent. They've got good talent at wide receiver. They don't seem to want to throw their talented playmakers at wide receiver the ball at times on Saturday against Tennessee, but it's just coming up a little bit short against Bama, losing 20-13 in a weird defensive battle against Tennessee on the road. But, Bobby, we've seen it time and time again, coming up just a little bit short, cost some good coaches their job every single year.
I mean, that's essentially when you're a coach at a big-time program like that and getting paid all that money, like you're not getting paid, to go beat your non-conference schedule. You're not getting paid to beat the bottom half of your conference. You're getting paid to coach against the other elite coaches when they have talent that's near equatable to yours, and you guys are right there. You need to outcoach them more often than not. Like, look at Nick Saban. We've talked about Alabama and some of their deficiencies this year. And granted, they've been undisciplined, had a ton of penalties. Milroe hasn't necessarily been perfect, but they found ways to win. And like the other guy, Brian Kelly, like I guarantee you he doesn't feel good giving up 40 points a game. But you know what? They're finding ways to win. And maybe it's not a national championship caliber roster, but they're still in competition. They're not getting embarrassed, and you're not seeing them go out there and go 7-5, 8-4. This is better than last season, but you're still seeing them lose those close games.
Columbus is always known for high ticket prices to get in. Where does this week rank? Because we've seen the secondary market is blowing up for Ohio State, Penn State.
Well, some of it's going to be weather. I think the get in the door price right now is about $175. I don't know if that'll go up or down here over the next couple of days. It's just some of it's supposed to rain in the morning, but I think be good by kickoff time. So, if weather kind of screws that up a little bit here in the north this time of year. But I would say that as far as games outside of Michigan, the Penn State game is always one of the hottest tickets. And maybe Notre Dame notwithstanding last year, the Penn State at home is about as good as you're going to get. And those ticket prices are generally, around $200 to get in for, I would define them as below average seats. Good seats on the 50 or between the 30s, 15 to 20 rows up. Those things are probably going to run you, $800 to $1,000 right now.
Final 15 seconds prediction presented by Carpenter HVAC. I'm curious how you think the game plays out on Saturday.
I think it'll be tight. I think it'll be more of a defensive struggle. I don't see it getting outside of the 20s. I mean, I would say Ohio State maybe by a touchdown in there. I know the spread's kind of tight. I kind of like it maybe, 21-24, somewhere 13-10, maybe a 17, but a very low-scoring contest.
Bobby, you're the man. Always enjoy these conversations and previews. We'll do it again next week.
Thanks, Bobby.
Thanks, guys.
There's Bobby Carpenter. Sirius XM Channel 84 is where you can catch him.
Just come back from the beach.
Headlines next, right here on Hot Mic with Hutton Withrow.
I'm here at the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix, but that's not the only big race that's on people's minds. Let's go talk about it.
there's no way Biden can win again. There's just no way. Even the people that voted for him because they didn't like Trump, now at least have to see like senile, not all there, probably won't be alive for 4 more years.
Are you a Trump guy? Or are you a DeSantis guy? Or someone else?
I don't like any of them.
Who's your dream candidate? Who would you want to run?
Myself. I think the best candidates probably are smart enough not to run.
I just hope there's somebody that's young enough to care about the country instead of their politics.
My fear is they get Gavin Newsom from California. And I think it would be the new cool vote for the younger people, and that's what I don't like.
Who do you think on the Republican side would be able to take on Gavin Newsom?
Great question. As a Republican registered, I love what Trump's body of work did, but they're just out to get him and destroy him, and we won't get things done, which is crappy for me to say. I thought DeSantis was going to be the guy. Trump only has 4 years left. He cannot fix everything that just happened in 4 years. And he's going to be battling indictments and all these false stuff for the next 4 years. We won't get anything done. And it'll just be the stalemate in America. That's why I almost don't want him in. But if he is the leading candidate, that's who I'm going to vote for.
Is there any Democrat that you would vote for, consider voting for?
Absolutely not.
What about RFK Jr.?
No.
Who should our first female president be?
Michelle Obama, of course. Yeah.
I'm going to go with Harambe 2024.
We have the 2024 presidential race coming up, and I wanted to see who you thought your favorite TV characters would vote for. Homer Simpson, like who do you think he would vote for?
Donald Trump, all the way.
Vito Corleone.
Whoa. Whoever advances the cause of the Corleone family. Yeah.
Tony Soprano. If Tony Soprano is voting in the 2024 election, who do you think he's voting for?
I'm going to go Ron DeSantis.
Okay, why do you think that?
Just seems like a Ron DeSantis kind of guy.
Is this a meatball joke that you're trying to make right now? What about Homer Simpson?
Homer would vote for Biden because he's a dope.
Who do you think Napoleon Dynamite would vote for?
That's a good question. I actually don't know.
There's a right answer here.
He's voting for himself or Pedro. There's a Viking show, I think.
Okay.
Maybe that's Hulu. I don't know.
So in the Viking show, whatever the main character is, who do you think they would vote for in 2024?
Probably a goat or a dog.
I think we have one of those in office right now. So who do you think Jon Snow would vote for in this upcoming election?
I'm going to say Donald J. Trump.
Why do you think so?
Because Game of Thrones is all about drama, and Trump comes with the drama, baby.
Would you vote for Trump from jail?
Yeah, probably. Because at that point, what else do you have to lose?
Okay, would you vote for Trump from a jail cell?
Hell yeah, baby. I will get Trump out of jail.
Would you vote for Trump in jail?
Oh, yeah.
Based as
The thing that Trump needs to remember is there's another political figure that said, I don't recall very well.
Yeah.
And that's all he's got to say.
Is there like a dream candidate, someone that you think could like save us all?
Yeah, Jesus.
Amen to that.
Just like that, the second hour is here. Hot Mic with Hunting Withrow across the OutKick network. Glad you're with us, whether that's streaming live on YouTube, on X, OutKick.com, and more. You can find us as well in this great radio partner. Our thanks to Walker Jones and Bobby Carpenter for joining us in hour number one. Coming up later this hour, Clay Travis will join us from Washington, D.C. That's where he has the Clay and Buck show taking place the rest of the week. Always great to catch up with Clay and get some of the analysis of the sports landscape going on today.
I saw his blood bank guarantee for the week with Kelly in Vegas. We'll have to ask him about it.
Okay. We've got also primary complaint plus Danny Cannell and Kurt Schilling in a little over an hour from right now. Kurt jumping on to discuss Max Scherzer. Been highly opinionated there.
I've been thoroughly bored by both league championship series so far. And I'm rightfully also very bitter watching the league championship series, just seeing the Phillies, I believe, that are going to roll to a world title this year.
You know what's fair, though? I agree with you because I really enjoyed the regular season.
Yeah,
and the
too.
playoffs have been a dud. But it's been the offense.
Baseball, for guys like us, and I think most people right now in America, when you look at the television numbers, football is so dominant on our brains this time of year. It takes a sledgehammer of a great series to really knock you off balance and get you to pay attention inning in, inning out, every night of a series. When the series are just sort of duds, other than a little flare-up in the Braves-Phillies series that was good for about 4 days, it's hard to get people's attention back on it. The Major League Baseball regular season was great because in May, June, July, when there's not a lot else going on, it was fun to watch because there's no competition. I think football just knocks it to the back seat to a level that to get back in the driver's seat of the national sports conversation, you have to be epic. In scope, in moment, in 7-game series.
Deliver.
In everything.
When you flip over, you got to deliver. If you can get people to flip over.
These series are not doing it so far. The division series did not do it at all. So, I mean, we can ask Kurt Schilling about that too when he comes on with us, but I think that's the problem right now with Major League Baseball. It's not necessarily any fault of their own. It's just the way these series are playing out.
Chad, Charlie Baker, president of the NCAA, took and faced more questions than just name, image, likeness whenever he was sitting before the hearing yesterday, the 10th hearing on name, image, likeness on Capitol Hill as we kick off our headlines today with Scorched Earth on Hot Mic. He also was questioned by 3 different lawmakers in regards to transgender policy, participation, specifically biological men competing against biological women. And the discussion turned into one of Riley Gaines, OutKick's own, and whether or not Baker would support the same policy that was in place in 2022 at the national championships that Mark Emmert was a part of enforcing, where Leah Thomas was in the women's locker room, dressed there, and stayed in there without anyone being notified. Riley Gaines has been on the show and said, we didn't know until we got there that this was going to be the policy. Separate and apart from whether or not men should compete against women, which is certainly what happened in this case, the topic was whether or not Charlie Baker would support those same policies moving forward. And he said he would not defend what happened, quote unquote, defend what happened where Leah Thomas is getting dressed and made women uncomfortable in the locker room, as you would expect. And went on to say that he wouldn't expect that to be the policy moving forward, but did not apologize to Riley Gaines, still hasn't, on behalf of the NCAA, knowing that it made her and others very uncomfortable, and would not get into whether or not transgender males, females should compete against their opposite gender in competition, saying that he would defer that to a letter he would be sending in writing. Well, there was a letter sent in writing by Riley Gaines to Charlie Baker whenever he took over as NCAA president, which has still not been returned in any type of format in a response. And here we are, where he says that the policy of getting dressed in a locker room would change. Competing against women doesn't sound like it will. And it should.
Yeah, I mean, the quote from Baker was, I don't believe that policy would be the policy that we would use today. I really wish we could just speak to each other as humans and not like there's a lawyer present at all times.
Right. Where you have to write a letter in response.
I truly believe deep down that Charlie Baker, like 99% of the world, believes that men should compete against men and women should compete against women.
Yeah.
And I believe that Charlie Baker thinks it is absurd that Riley Gaines and other female swimmers were forced to change in front of male genitalia in a locker room. I also believe 100% that Charlie Baker is afraid for his life to offer a legitimate apology or to say what he wants to say in fear that it will somehow be used against him in a lawsuit from someone, and that he is being trained by a lawyer or media person or something to say things a certain way. We live in a litigious society, and that is something that certainly could happen. And I guess if you apologize, you open yourself up for libel, that you did something wrong if you're apologizing about it. I don't know. I just really wish that we could all treat this from a human and rational perspective and just say what everyone knows and what everyone really believes. Most everyone. Some people are a little crazy about this, but most everyone agrees with Riley Gaines. And deep down, I think most everyone agrees with Charlie Baker. Hutton, I just don't think he's willing to come right out and say it and offer a personal apology to her or anyone else because he's afraid the NCAA is going to get sued if he does so, and that's going to be some sort of admission of something they did wrong. I just wish we could be humans about it.
Yeah, and again, he's only saying that the policy would change in regards to dressing in the other locker room.
Yeah.
For making women feel uncomfortable without their consent. That's the other thing. But beyond that, he's not saying really anything at all. And Riley pointed that out in her response. I was excited to hear of Charlie Baker's acceptance of the NCAA position because Mr. Baker has a reputation of fairness and for considering all viewpoints. He was an accomplished student athlete at Harvard. He has a daughter who is about my age who played sports growing up. Because of all of this, I imagine that he would be adamant about prioritizing fairness and the integrity of sports rather than creating guidelines that limit opportunities for females under the guise of promoting inclusion. And let me be clear, the guidelines he mentioned in this week's Senate Judiciary hearing are no less harmful to women, no less discriminatory to women than those in 2022. Without single-sex competition, there can be no equal athletic opportunity. Well said. And an opportunity to say something yesterday, he chose not to. Instead, saying more details would be in writing. We'll wait on that.
Lawyer.
It took 10
lawyer,
hearings.
legal,
the 10th hearing to hear from in public to hear from Charlie Baker on name, image, likeness. So don't hold your breath on any of this. Chad,
I'd love to get his actual opinions on everything. I'd love to get it in writing. I'd love to clearly understand it. I just don't know that we'll ever get that. I think people in position of that much power or in these spots, it's so rare that you get an actual candid moment where they give you their God's honest opinion on something, anything. And I think this is another example of one of those issues that is so obvious to virtually all Americans.
Right.
But people, for whatever reason, are just unwilling to say it.
Yeah, I mean, we say it. Two genders.
Yeah.
Female, male. It's not that difficult to figure out here.
Well,
on
and,
the fairness
and
of
Riley
competition.
Gaines is doing a good job continuing to carry the fight of what's right and what's rational in
Right.
all of this. But, I mean, until the people in power are just willing to come out and say it and talk about the absurdity of going the other way with it, then, I don't know where we're going with it. Hopefully it goes the right direction.
Check out the Riley Gaines podcast, Gaines for Girls, available at OutKick.com. Roger Goodell, Chad, would you like to guess what his annual salary has been currently?
More than Deshaun Watson makes?
Annually, yes.
Okay. Well, that's my guess. More than Deshaun Watson.
Deshaun Watson makes what, 45 to 50 million annually?
That sounds right.
Based on
You're better
the
with numbers
structure of
than
this
me.
contract. Roger Goodell makes a reported $64 million per year and is worth now over $200 million, according to Forbes. He had his contract renewed, made official by the NFL yesterday, an additional 3 years. So it is now expiring in 2027. In 3 years, Chad, do you think there will be a organization, a franchise in London? I say yes.
I say yes, and it's going to be the Jacksonville Jaguars.
And I think another. I think they need two.
You think it's going to be an expansion team?
An expansion team, No, because I think if they expand,
They'd have to go
they would go to add
two
it to
expansions.
34 teams. So in this scenario, if Jacksonville's one of the teams, you'd have to have 2 more expansion teams to even it out. I don't think they want that. They do, it sounds like, want a division there. And I think eventually we're going to see that. They want that global push. That's what we're seeing. They're playing 5 games now. They got the Germany stretch coming up with a massive fan base and audience there. And moving forward, it sounds like Spain and Brazil are the next 2 in line, maybe as early as next year, to get regular season games. This is where, Jonathan Taylor's getting guaranteed in his new contract with the Colts $24.5 million. Goodell, at least $64 million, and my guess is it continues to rise. By the way, not every owner agrees with the payment and just rubber stamping the contract. Jerry Jones has questioned that. But it's hard to argue what Goodell means as the figurehead of the National Football League. They print money, and so does Roger Goodell, in the case on behalf of the owners. Yesterday, McClain said he thought that he would tamp down the discussion about Super Bowl in London or getting a division there or just a team there permanently. He's not saying that without hearing that discussion through NFL ownership, because he wouldn't bring it up in the first place if it wasn't a thing. And NFL owners are, by and large, they're thrilled to go and play a game there, because everyone's splitting a cut of all of that and the expansion of the NFL brand into a completely different country and market and audience.
Who's got it harder? Roger Goodell or whoever the person is that has to middle manage everything before it gets to Roger Goodell, that has to get all the fires and try to put them out in advance before taking it to the big boss and doing all that work? I'm sure that person is also handsomely paid. But I do wonder what the more difficult job is. Being the top guy, the commissioner of the NFL, or being the lieutenant that's doing all the dirty work and trying to shield things from Roger Goodell.
I think if the owner calls or Goodell talks to the owners directly, that's one thing. I think that would be extremely difficult, handling all of the owners that want different things in particular. For they want Super Bowls, they want the contracts to be a certain way, or complaining about the contract that Deshaun Watson received, or tanking for Caleb Williams. All these different things. He's, by and large, he's fielding all of those calls. Everything else would be the lieutenant.
Yeah.
And that's also very difficult.
There are, I joke, but there are parts of the job that I'm sure none of us could ever fully realize unless you were in his seat and doing the job of the commissioner of any major sports league, especially the National Football League. I think 95% of what he does, though, is just people management, and those people are the 32 owners, is knowing the psychology of each one, balancing it out, making every single one of them feel heard at all times, doing things to enact on their behalf while not pissing off another owner, and balancing that out, knowing some decisions are going to make one person angry and one person happy, and then trying to figure out how to make good on the person that's angry. I think that's 95% of the job. And I'm not saying that's easy when you've got a collection of billionaires with their egos that you're trying to balance. But to me, it's all just people management if you're Roger Goodell. And it's very clear he does a good job with that, or he wouldn't still be in this position making the money that he is.
Well, and he his contract dwarfs the other commissioners' salaries. It's
because the revenue of the NFL dwarfs the other leagues.
Well, right, but there, in the case of the NFL, even when a franchise is valued at a certain billion-dollar price, it goes and exceeds that. When they want Daniel Snyder out without voting him out, Goodell finds a way to make sure it happens. They find an ownership group that, while they have to adjust certain guidelines and criteria to make sure they get this purchase through, at the end of the day, it's a $6 billion purchase. And they just added a Walton, another one, to the NFL ownership group last year with Denver. It continues to roll forward every time, regardless of market. It's incredible. And at some point, doesn't it plateau? Doesn't it reach the peak? That would be the expectation, but not if you expand to the new markets and the completely different fan base you can build. I think they're just getting started with that.
Enough is never enough. It's never enough anywhere. Manifest destiny. Here we go.
And here's hoping that what Tom Brady is discussing with, maybe the NFL is just embracing flag football. That's where he believes that's where they're headed. We'll get to that and more headlines coming up. Plus, primary complaint. That will be just before Clay Travis joins us in about 30 minutes. Hang with us. Hot Mic with Hunter Withrow rolls on.
The idea that we believe all women is total nonsense. As I told you, my sister, a 25-year prosecutor, made that very clear to not only me, but certainly her son, my son, and my nephew Pete. They're all the same age, these boys. But she also warned him of women like this cretin here, this gold diggings clown that decided I'm going to get my hooks into a big league ball player. I mean, look, big league ball players are dumb sometimes, but everybody's dumb sometimes. And Trevor Bauer, a guy named John Heyman, wrote an article which was titled, "Bauer Has Lost His Career and Deservedly So." You'll never hear John Heyman, who by all accounts is a famous baseball writer, apologize. You will never hear any of these fools apologize because our print media is the worst. Now, we're lucky here at OutKick that we have great people. But the national print media, the dudes that are out there, the Greg Doyles of the world, the John Heymans of the world, the Dana Bembaus of the world, this Molly Knight who reported that this woman had a fractured skull. That's right. This idiot Molly Knight works for The Atlantic, and she got fired, I guess, I don't know. Molly Knight is her name, not Wright, Knight. She, honest to God, wrote that this girl got her skull fractured. I looked up Molly Knight. Molly Knight is now basically unemployed, and of course, her Twitter is protected. Of course it is. This lady, Molly Knight, is a ridiculous fraud for printing that. It's all in The Athletic. It's in the affidavit. This woman, of course, went cowardly like all writers do when they're wrong. Ain't nothing wrong with John Heyman or Molly Knight coming out and saying, hey, what can I tell you? I got it wrong. But they can't do it. They can't do it because they're little posses that get a little bit of power and they don't know how to handle it. John Heyman is a little scrawny guy like Doyle that got a little bit of suck as they've gotten older, a little bit. And like politicians, they don't know how to handle it. They're the worst of the absolute worst. I got a guy from Iowa telling me, no, there's some really good writers. Yeah, Armando is. Yeah, the guys that write here are. But we're not bound by the same stupidity of USA Today. We're not governed. You can write freely here and you can write the truth without fear of retribution as long as it's the truth. Can't do that in mainstream media, or they won't do that in mainstream media. There's got to be a bias. There's got to be an angle. There's got to be a push. If you're a woman, there's got to be a push. If you're black, got to be a push. If you're white, got to be a push. Got to be some kind of bias. I learned the other day, this was pretty funny. I know that if you do not agree with the liberal side, you will be called a name. I got a family member that calls me far right. I'm like, really? I don't even know what that means, but I get it. You're a liberal, so I'm far right. You got to call me a name. The world is insane. Good for Trevor Bauer. Cubs, sign Trevor Bauer. I'll wear a damn Trevor Bauer jersey, and you can kiss my backside on any of them. Any of them.
6th and Peabody, our location with EHOP Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow rolls on.
What a world we live in, Hutton.
It is.
What a world we live in. Amazing. Hey, the YouTube chat's been on fire today.
Yeah?
It's been good.
In what ways?
Oh, just
arguments or
just huge opinions being thrown out there.
Cool.
Willy-nilly, left
Love
and
that.
right. I'm going at it with one person, someone else is going at it with another person. It's great, but I mean it all ends very friendly. I've never had any interaction in our show's YouTube chat that's not ended well. It's people disagree and then in the end they come together.
Even with the porn bots?
It's great. It's like a South Philly bar where guys get really drunk and then they just go out in the alley and they fight it out and they come back in and buy each other a shot and everything's fine. That's kind of the YouTube chat.
Come back in bloodied and black eyes, but you're still drinking.
Yeah, no porn bots yet today either, so that's good.
Well, whoever's in whoever.
There was one girl from
those
Belarus who
awesome.
asked me where I lived, but that was about it. You know, that's usually what you get. I swear on Instagram, I'll look down. I'm like, oh, I've got 17 likes of something on Instagram, and it's it's Angel Envy 478965 whatever with like 17 followers that has liked every picture in my account over and over again every time.
That could be a top complaint for Chad Withrow. I know it's not because it's not his top grievance of the week. It is time.
Oh, it's not.
For primary complaint.
It is not.
It's time to air our top grievance of the week.
You can complain all you want.
My job is so unfulfilling. Don't run away from your feelings.
It's time for Hot Mike's primary complaint.
Guys, my primary complaint this week, clickbait BS that is all over social media each and every day. And the most recent example is something that took up, 30, 45-minute discussion on a text chain between Chad and myself and Davey Hudson.
I was shaken by the story when I saw it. Legitimately shook.
I mean, Dov Kleiman, an aggregator for NFL News, puts out this report. USC's Caleb Williams wants partial ownership from the NFL team that will select him in the 2024 draft per Pro Football Talk, if I could say it right. Pro Football Talk. PFT reported in July that Caleb's representatives had been making it known that Williams wanted partial ownership of teams or a team that would select him in 2024 if he declares for the draft. And then he sends a link. Now, in the original tweet or the post on X, you only see the first 2 lines of this, and then you have to read more. You do that, and you could read that going back to a report that he's citing from PFT in July. But this leads everyone to believe that it's an updated report based on what someone within the Caleb Williams camp has told Florio or someone else writing for Pro Football Talk. It's classic clickbait for a report that was out there prior to the college football season, prior to training camp. It happened over 3 months ago in July that is now being reposted and shared and liked and commented on as we sit here a week before Halloween. That's my primary complaint.
Dov Kleiman, who has been a guest on this show, Davey, I want him permanently.
He has been?
X'd out. He has. We have had him on the show.
Oh, I don't think we have.
Not since I've been here.
I recall recording something from my house with him, and Hutton was recording from home as well. We had him on the show.
I know you're talking about. That
I
wasn't
want
climbing.
him.
That wasn't climbing.
Who was it?
No one has ever seen this guy.
Oh, who was it that we had?
That was Ari.
Ari, yeah. Similar name. My bad. My bad. Hey, look how I just did that. I apologized. That'll lead in my primary complaint. Look, I fall on the sword. I screw something up. I'm the first to say, hey,
well, Ari,
I'm an idiot.
Wait.
It was Ari Mirov and not Dov Kleiman. You can see how the names sound familiar, and they're both mysterious NFL avatars
not
that
anymore.
Put a lot of news out.
Not anymore. They used to be. It used to be My NFL Update or My Sports Update. That's what Ari was running. And then Ari put his headshot and his name on the account. And in this case, I don't know. I've been asked if Dov is real.
Is a person?
Yeah. Like if it's like a burner account for something, I was like, no, he's
Peter King's burner,
a legit aggregator. In this case, I'm not going to click
A
on
legit aggregator.
Yeah,
That's an oxymoron.
I mean, it's not a. Well, he is. I mean, most of the time.
I'm saying, yeah, if you
it's
aggregate,
linked to something that's being reported that day, not something in July.
I'm getting fired up over here just hearing all these things. Yeah, Art Mirov, great. Davey, keep him on the list. He was a terrific guest of the show. Dov Kleiman, dead. I don't know if Dov Kleiman's ever done an interview, but his first interview will definitely not be on this show. I'll tell you where he won't do an interview. It's on Hot Mic at any point in time. Again, I will raise my hand and apologize when I screw something up. This is what is killing me right now. When you get into an email chain or a text group or a text back and forth or an email back and forth with someone, and you clearly have them. You're arguing about something, you're doing something, it could be with a friend, a family member, a colleague, anyone, and they're giving you points and you're giving a counterpoint, and then when your counterpoints become so great that there's no response to it, the answer is silence. Colin got scared there when he heard the dead air. Silence. Silence. Crickets. This is the response. Tim Robinson has a great sketch comedy show called I Think You Should Leave on Netflix. Season 2, first sketch is a really funny one about this political commentator who's got a YouTube show that gets into arguments with people, and the moment you start making good points, his whole thing is he gets really into his phone, and he stops listening to you. And he's just, the rest of the show is him just there looking at his phone, slouched over in his chair. This has become a common refrain in 2023 America, and it's starting to piss me off. If you've been had in an argument, just admit, hey, here's where I'm wrong, here's where you're right, here's where we move forward, instead of just answering it with silence. When you get facts or you get truth or you get legitimate arguments on the other side, go ahead and acknowledge those. It's fine. We don't always have to be adversaries. We can work together. We can play together. Buddies, if you're in the group text, just because I made a good point, you don't have one back, just say, hey, fair point, moving on. Don't go silent. Don't ghost. That's a coward's approach, and I'm tired of it, and it's my primary complaint.
Guys, there were several things I was debating on going with for today, but I have decided on the Big Ten.
Davey, I'll never ghost you, by the way, in a text. I'll always. If you ever, the one time that you beat me in an argument, I'm going to tell you, Davey, well done.
I feel like you're taking a shot there as if like I've never beaten you in an argument.
I was definitely taking a shot.
Yeah. When that happens, Davey, he'll tell you.
When it happens, I'll be the first to say, hey, that's a good point by Davey. Point, Davey.
Well, speaking of points, a team that does not score any is the Iowa Hawkeyes football team. And they're the big reason for my primary complaint because they are set to play in the Big Ten championship. It's going to happen. You look at the team that's second in the Big Ten West, and it's Wisconsin, who Iowa just beat 15-6. This is a garbage division, and whenever there's so much on the line for this year, and I know it's changing next year whenever you bring in the 4 West Coast teams, but right now it's just pathetic. And the other problem is I'm a degenerate, but when you look at the line for this the over-under for this coming week, Iowa, Minnesota, it's 31.5, and yet I am sitting here hammering the under. It shouldn't be the case in modern college football. You look at the average points scored for a team across the NCAA and FBS opponents, there are 37 teams that average over 31.5 points a game, and yet this is the over-under for these two teams that have no idea how to score points. I mean, Brian Ferentz is getting fired. We all know that's coming. It's tough to watch, let alone whenever it's a year where everything seems wide open. I know in the past we've had Michigan and Ohio State make the college football playoff, but the fact that we're missing out on another great game because Iowa is likely the de facto Big Ten champion or Big Ten West champion, it just makes the product sour. It's no fun for the fans, and it's no fun for me as I'm probably going to have to sweat out this 31.5 point under bet that's coming up on Saturday, and that's my primary complaint.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback on that. The Big Ten West in general.
Oh,
like this is your champion. This is your representative. It's just miserable that this is the case.
They're 3-1 in conference. Wisconsin is the only other team in that division that has more than one conference win.
Yeah, and they lost the head-to-head with them. That's what the sad part is. this team could go. Bobby Carpenter said, I mean, they're likely to go 11-1. Iowa with that offense. I mean, there's no. Do you fire the offensive coordinator? I know they have the points per game deal in there, but
the clause, yeah.
11-1.
You have to abide by that.
I mean,
11-1.
Brian Ferentz can come back and say, guys, this is our formula. I am playing winning football on that side of the ball. It is my job to get a couple first downs and milk the clock without
making
scoring.
you money because you're betting the under every week, too.
I am flipping the field, guys. It is Operation Flip the Field. That's all I'm here to do. It's not to score. Forget about that. Don't worry about points, touchdowns, field goals. That's yesterday. My job is to flip the field. 2-3 first downs, milk the clock, punt it back, let the other team make the mistake. That's what we're here to do at Iowa. That's the rallying cry. Crazy to think that team could win a division.
Well,
I'm trying to think
and
back.
what is it? What happens now as they move forward with the 4 Pac-12 teams coming in? I mean, that's going to bolster whatever record we're looking at other than the top 3. Yeah, but I mean, the perception will change next year. But you're right, and it's been bad for a long time.
It's bad. That division's terrible.
The last time a Big Ten West team won the Big Ten was 2012.
Not good. Not good. And that would have been Wisconsin, right?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. So this from Warren Sharp Football. I just saw this post.
Okay.
If the NFL feels different this year, that's because it is. It's not as exciting. It's the fewest touchdowns since 2010. It's not as explosive. Lowest percentage since 2009. It's not nearly as entertaining. Largest margins of victory since 2014. And he posts a deep dive analysis with surprising findings on stats for this year. Interesting post from him and how long it's been that we've had a year devoid of offense this level and devoid of close games.
Yeah,
to this level.
Well, they've had close games.
The percentage of close games.
Yeah, so the NFL's pushing the competitive nature of their weekly matchups, and by and large, there've been a lot of one-score games. They're also, I mean, within that though, they're counting the Rams kicking a meaningless field goal to get it within one possession as time expires. They're taking that into account, and they're of course looking at a lot of bad offense and what is perceived to be great defense. I buy the fact that the Browns are really good on the defensive side of the football. Jets as well. But, I mean, when I'm starting the Rams defense last week in fantasy football and getting points because my other defense is on the bye, Chad, there's no way I should be doing that. And there's no way I should be selecting the Rams defense. But I'm doing it based on matchups against perceived quarterback play that should be good that just frankly is not. And we're seeing a deficiency on the offensive line. Then I pointed out the scoring and the lack of touchdowns. 100 less touchdowns than 2021 through 6 weeks.
Crazy.
100.
And we had a team score 70 in a game.
Yeah.
With all those stats,
too. Yes. The close games, yes.
Dolphins offense is letting them hang in there.
Why they're pushing this is because the networks last year complained about the lack of competitive games in primetime. They're pushing the primetime games haven't been good, but they're pointing to the competitive nature for the networks to see. By the way, I mean, we're still watching the NFL. Ratings are solid, but the games and the products, not that great. And I don't know if they see this as an issue or not, because on the scoreboard in the fourth quarter, the game's knotted at 17 apiece, and a team's trying to break 20. When 2 years ago, you were hoping to keep a team below 30. I mean, that's not a good look for a league that has the rules set up for offensive firepower.
Not good at all.
Chad, PointsBet, if you haven't taken your shot with PointsBet, now's the perfect moment. Here's a big reason why. Exclusively first-time PointsBet users grab this unique offer right now. New PointsBet users can get up to $1,000 in second chance bets. If your first bet doesn't go as planned, PointsBet has your back with a second chance. Get this offer by visiting OutKick.com/bet. OutKick.com/bet. Complete the registration process with PointsBet and then make your first bet. If your first bet happens to lose, that's when the second chance bets come to play. Remember, terms and conditions apply. Got to be 21 or older in legal gambling states. Gambling problem, 1-800-GAMBLER. Head over to OutKick.com right now, OutKick.com/bet to snag this offer. Do you see the inmate that had a parlay, a 16 parlay, had $10,000 bail, and made bail based
Cashed
on
out.
cashed out over
and change.
13,000, and ends up making bail on what is a crazy story that includes straight money line parlay of the Rams, Jets, Raiders, Liberty, the Bills, and the Lions. $13,466. IB the Gambler on social says his name is Rashid. Incarcerated Rashid.
I would like
bails
to
out.
offer Rashid a work release program job with me, making bets for me.
Clay Travis makes bets. He joins us next.
I'm here at the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix, but that's not the only big race that's on people's minds. Let's go talk about it.
There's no way Biden can win again. There's just no way. Even the people that voted for him because they didn't like Trump now at least have to see like senile, not all there. Probably won't be alive for 4 more years.
Are you a Trump guy? Or are you a DeSantis guy? Or someone else?
I don't like any of them.
Who's your dream candidate? Who would you want to run?
Myself. I think the best candidates probably are smart enough not to run.
I just hope there's somebody that's young enough to care about the country instead of their politics.
My fear is they get Gavin Newsom from California. And I think it would be the new cool vote for the younger people, and that's what I don't like.
Who do you think on the Republican side would be able to take on Gavin Newsom?
Great question. As a Republican registered, I love what Trump's body of work did, but they're just out to get him and destroy him, and we won't get things done, which is crappy for me to say. I thought DeSantis was going to be the guy. Trump only has 4 years left. He cannot fix everything that just happened in 4 years. And he's going to be battling indictments and all these false stuff for the next 4 years. We won't get anything done. And it'll just be the stalemate in America. That's why I almost don't want him in. But if he is the leading candidate, that's who I'm going to vote for.
Is there any Democrat that you would vote for, consider voting for?
Absolutely not.
What about RFK Jr.?
No.
Who should our first female president be?
Michelle Obama, of course. Yeah.
I'm going to go with Harambe 2024.
We have the 2024 presidential race coming up, and I wanted to see who you thought your favorite TV characters would vote for. Homer Simpson, like who do you think he would vote for?
Donald Trump, all the way.
Vito Corleone.
Whoa. Whoever advances the cause of the Corleone family. Yeah.
Tony Soprano. If Tony Soprano is voting in the 2024 election, who do you think he's voting for?
I'm going to go Ron DeSantis.
Okay, why do you think that?
Just seems like a Ron DeSantis kind of guy.
Is this a meatball joke that you're trying to make right now? What about Homer Simpson?
Homer would vote for Biden because he's a dope.
Who do you think Napoleon Dynamite would vote for?
That's a good question. I actually don't know.
There's a right answer here.
He's voting for himself or Pedro.
There's a Viking show, I think.
Okay.
Maybe that's Hulu. I don't know.
So in the Viking show, whatever the main character is, who do you think they would vote for in 2024?
Probably a goat or a dog.
I think we have one of those in office right now. So who do you think Jon Snow would vote for in this upcoming election?
I'm going to say Donald J. Trump.
Why do you think so?
Because Game of Thrones is all about drama, and Trump comes with the drama, baby.
Would you vote for Trump from jail?
Yeah, probably. Because at that point, what else do you have to lose?
Okay, would you vote for Trump from a jail cell?
Hell yeah, baby. I will get Trump out of jail.
Would you vote for Trump in jail?
Oh, yeah.
Based as
The thing that Trump needs to remember is there's another political figure that said, I don't recall very well.
Yeah.
And that's all he's got to say.
Is there like a dream candidate, someone that you think could like save us all?
Yeah, Jesus.
Amen to that.
Coming up in 20 minutes, Danny Cannell will join us on Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick network. Right now, we head to Washington, D.C. That was the site of the 10th hearing before the on Capitol Hill for name, image, likeness, and the future of college sports as we know it. Clay Travis is there, up there for the show, and he joins us now on the show this afternoon. Clay, hope things are well, man.
I'm doing well. How are y'all?
Fantastic.
I'm doing well, Clay. So just when you thought a 9th congressional hearing was going to get the job done, they came back for a 10th. Clay, you know U.S. government better than anyone that I know. So I'm going to ask you this. Is anything really getting accomplished at these hearings over NIL? And what do you think, just in general, about the concept of the NCAA going to the U.S. government and Congress to try to figure out their issues?
So one, I don't know if you can hear these melodic tunes that are playing. I don't even know. It sounds like I'm, like at an easy listening jazz party in downtown DC right now. I'm not even sure where that music's coming from.
We're very jealous.
But I think in general that what's going on is there is a recognition that the world of college athletics has changed, and there are multiple different perspectives associated with how that change should be addressed. There are some people who are saying, hey, just leave it to the states. And this is not dissimilar from the way that a lot of things happen, and let every individual state make their own law as to what is and what is not appropriate. And for instance, that's what's going on right now with sports gambling. Every individual state can decide, hey, what's the age that somebody gambles? How many licenses are we going to give out? Are we even going to permit it at all? And then there are other people who are saying, no. What we need is one federal response. We need a law that governs everybody. And basically the NCAA historically has been the federal response. They are the entity that sets all the rules. Everybody agrees to be bound by those rules, and they basically govern the notions of fair play and how the rules are going to be applied. And so what you're dealing with now is two different arguments. Leave it to the states, and let me give you like the downside. States can compete and pass laws that give favorable treatment to all of the individual institutions inside of those states, which honestly is probably what they're going to do, right? And then on the flip side, people say, well, that's not going to create an even playing field because the state of Florida is going to have a different rule than the state of California. And that's where we are right now. Every state can set its own NIL rules, and there is now a demand that for competitive reasons, they need one standard of rule for everyone. And I don't know politically what the result is going to end up doing, but that's really what the fight is over on its most basic level. Now, to your question, do these hearings make it more likely or less likely that we're going to get a federal solution? I don't know, unless something's changed in the last couple of hours. They can't even figure out who the Speaker of the House is. So I don't have a lot of faith that the Senate and the House are going to be able to figure out college athletics.
Clay Travis joins us on Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick network. Keeping the lawyer hat on here, Clay, how difficult is it to set up a players association if college football players wanted to do so? And if it's down the road, and it's, certainly it's a process that haven't started, what leadership needs to be in place for that? And do you think we have a federal solution or a players association first?
So the complicating factor on all of this is that if there's a players association, basically what you're going to do is negotiate some form or fashion of employment-related agreement. So, and again, this is the legal analysis on things. And I don't think most people realize this, but you can't just say, hey, we're only going to pay NFL players $120 million per team, right? That's a restraint on trade. That is an unacceptable antitrust violation. So how do you end up agreeing to have a salary cap, let's say? Well, because you have a collective bargaining agreement, which is all of the players and all of the teams bargain against each other. The union represents the players. Obviously, the league is represented usually by the commissioner. And then you are able to have an antitrust violation, which a salary cap would be, for instance, because you have a collective bargaining agreement, which allows an antitrust exemption. So I raise all of that to say that I think probably what would be the most competitive result is every team agrees, hey, we're only going to pay, $20 million a year for all of the talent that plays for our team. But the way that would get applied, you would have to have a collective bargaining agreement in order to get the antitrust exemption. Otherwise, it would be a flagrant violation of antitrust law. So, again, this is really complicated. I don't think most people understand it very well, but those are the complexities that are in play that make a solution not as easy as you might anticipate.
All right, Clay. So if you're the decision maker at Texas A&M with Jimbo Fisher, given what's going on right now, 3 losses, games remaining, South Carolina at home, at Ole Miss, Mississippi State at home, Abilene Christian at LSU. Odds are, and Vegas will have them favored in the South Carolina game, Mississippi State, Abilene Christian. They're looking at 7-5 if everything breaks out the way it probably should the rest of the way. Given that Texas and Oklahoma are joining the SEC, does that make it more imperative for A&M to make a move if you're making that decision to move on to a new era, or do they need to stay where they are given the changes that are about to happen?
I think it depends on who you can get. I think if you are making a change on Jimbo Fisher, you have to think in terms of ceiling and floor. And what I mean by that is most fans always think, well, if we fire the coach, things are going to get better. But the data actually reflects that if you fire a coach, about half the time you get worse and about half the time you get better. And no one out there that I'm aware of has a better resume right now than Jimbo Fisher had when he got hired by Texas A&M. So if Jimbo didn't work, you have to convince me why somebody else would work better. And you would have to convince me that not only are they going to work better, but you're so confident in that you're comfortable replacing and paying out $75 million to solve that issue. So I think you're right. I think A&M likely to go 7-5 if I were betting. 8-4 probably top end for sure. And that is the decision that A&M is going to have to make. And I always say anger is an emotion. It's not a strategy. And lots of people get angry, and I understand it because college football and athletics is a very emotional related thing. But I mean, I think you can point to the Speaker of the House situation that's going on right now and say, look, this is what happens when anger governs as opposed to strategy. So there are a lot of really smart A&M people. The wealth of the A&M boosters is off the charts relative to the oil money they've all created. So the dollars, I think, are less significant in terms of cost than who the guy is that you feel like would be head and shoulders better than what you've got right now.
All right, Clay, blood bank guarantee time. I know you've got the fade with Kelly in Vegas weekly. You've talked about it there, but what is your blood bank college football guarantee of the week?
The over in South Carolina at Missouri. I'm not sure what the number is at right now.
It's 60.5 because I saw it, Clay, at 58.5 where you bet it, and I immediately went to go bet it myself and saw that maybe it was your suggestion that moved Vegas 2 points, but now it's 60.5.
Yeah, I still like the over in this game. South Carolina hasn't proven that they can stop anybody. Missouri has shown that they're going to score 30-plus pretty much on most of the teams they play against. I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, South Carolina gave up 41 to Tennessee, 37 to Mississippi State, and I believe 39 to Florida in their last 3 SEC games. I would bet a lot of money that Missouri's going to score 35 plus. Wouldn't surprise me if they got over 40. The offense is pretty solid for South Carolina. I'm not sure what the team total is right now for Missouri, but I feel like Missouri's going to go for a big number, and Missouri's defense has not stopped people that often. I think they'll give up 20 plus to South Carolina. So the math on that still, to me, hits over 60.5. But yeah, we gave it out on Tuesday morning on the radio show or the fade with Kelly in Vegas, and also with the picture with the points that are posted, the picks that are posted. We gave it out on Tuesday, so I still love that bet.
Clay, if not now, when for Penn State as they hit the road and head to Columbus? What do you make of the matchup, and how are you betting it?
I took Penn State plus 4.5. Again, I don't know what that number is. I bet it early in the week. I think Penn State's going to win outright. This is going to be a defensive struggle, I think. Both teams have very solid defenses. I think Penn State's actually got the better offense. Drew Aller obviously is going to have to play well on the road. That's tough to do in the shoe, but I think Penn State's better. Now, when is it going to happen? Well, look, I mean, I also think there's a decent argument that Penn State could lose to Ohio State, come back and beat Michigan, that Michigan could lose to Ohio State, and you end up in a 3-way 11-1 conference, Big Ten East Conference division tie. We've seen similar situations to that arise in the past. So that's what I would point out as one potential outcome. But I actually don't think the Ohio State offense is super elite. I think they got a very good defense, but they have not really put it all together offensively. They were fortunate to beat Notre Dame. I think Penn State's going to beat them outright, but I love Penn State plus 4.5. I believe I'm correct in this. I think James Franklin has covered 13 straight games.
Wow.
Which is pretty crazy.
Amazing.
Obviously that's going to come to a close at some point. I don't know when that will be. But you get the plus 4.5. I like Penn State on the number. You got a little bit of a leeway there. But I think they get the cover.
Final minute here, Clay. The over-under in Tennessee and Alabama is the over-under for either team last year when we were at Neyland.
Yeah.
You like the under in this game?
I do. I think this is a totally different game than last year. Hendon Hooker and Bryce Young are both gone. Tennessee's worse at the wide receiver position. I think Bama's significantly worse at the running back, the offensive line. I think both defenses are going to dominate. It's going to come down to whether Jalen Milroe or Joe Milton hits deep shots, but I don't think either of them will hit a lot of deep shots. I don't think there'll be a lot of points scored either way. I think Alabama wins a close game, relatively single-digit game, but I like the under more than either side.
Catch Clay on big new kickoff that's coming up this Saturday
from Luke Bryan's house.
Luke Bryan's property.
I'll be on with Luke. Yeah, with Luke Bryan Saturday on Fox with Big Noon. Should be fun. So should be a great weekend. Can't wait for the games.
Same here. Clay, always enjoy this, man. Thank you for the time. Enjoy DC.
Will do. I'll see y'all.
Clay Travis, founder of OutKick, doing his thing on Capitol Hill.
I don't know what to think about Penn State, Ohio State. I feel like I would be heavy Penn State if it were at home. I would almost expect them to win the game at home, but because it's in Columbus, I like Ohio State in a battle. I think Ohio State wins a close game.
I trust Penn State's defense more than I trust what I've seen from Ohio State.
Crazy fact about James Franklin, 13 straight covers.
And they've won each game by 17. At least.
Davey was telling us before the show, worst team in America in college football covering the spread.
Go ahead.
Vanderbilt. 1-7.
They covered last week, though.
There's no way they have played that many games because they started in week 0.
Yeah.
I was like, wait a minute. That 8 games seems like a lot, but it's possible.
Coming up, we visit with Danny Cannell. A lot to discuss across college football. We preview more games with him next, right here on Hot Mic with Honey Withrow across the OutKick Network.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey.
Welcome into OutKick, the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the number 1 overall pick.
Is it fair for people to be upset with Barbie?
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. I mean, what have you seen firsthand of how this has affected you in the plant and your fellow employees? Under Joe Biden, the Taliban has retaken Afghanistan. Putin has invaded Ukraine. So if there was ever a time for freaking aliens to inhabit and conquer Earth, now would be that time.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
There's no doubt in my mind he could have caught the ball in his back pocket if he'd been running. Blowing a lead and losing a game is 100 times more lasting and painful in some clubhouses than losing the game 15-0. If I had to start a list in the last 10 years of horrible underachievers, he's at the top.
We were directly impacted by the whole Leah Thomas thing, and we were able to see you guys on the ground with your signs supporting. That was huge.
They were saying, oh, it's only 1 or 2. That's rubbish, and we all know that's rubbish. Once those trans-identifying males were able to succeed, it just encouraged others.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Bold taste of a Southern legend.
Just like that.
Just like that.
The final hours here, Wednesday edition, Hot Mic with Hunter Withrow across the OutKick Network. 6th and Peabody, our broadcast location each and every day with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. A lot to get to over the course of the next hour. This afternoon, we've got Kurt Schilling, who will join us in 20 minutes. We'll break down what has been a positively boring postseason with the domination by one side, not the other. And we'll preview what his top pick would be for the
That
World
is what
Series.
you call a sales pitch right there. We will break down this absolutely boring.
Well, part of it,
Major League Baseball postseason coming up.
He's got big opinions on Max Scherzer and others, so
I hope
he'll
so.
bring it. He'll bring it.
I don't have big opinions on what's happening right now, so I'm relying on Kurt to bring the big opinions to us.
You know who brings the opinion and the energy, as always, is Danny Cannell.
College football not boring right now.
No,
That's the good news for our next guest.
Ratings are up in a big way. You can say that about Danny's shows as well. Dusty and Danny, Sirius XM Channel 84, weekdays 6 to 9 a.m. Plus the Cover 3 pod, which is excellent, goes live each and every day at 11. Danny Cannell joins us courtesy of Bet Online. You can check out betonline.net for updated college football playoff, conference, Heisman, and college football Week 8 lines. Danny, what's up, man? How are you?
I am fantastic. I'm just marveling at technology that can blur the background here behind me. Like I'm usually at home in like the home studio, and it's kind of freaking me out because it feels like the movie Total Recall. You guys remember that with Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Some of that, like, it's just a weird vibe going on right now, but I'm straight from the golf course. And I'm fired up to talk to you guys, so we'll just make it happen. We'll make it work.
I think back on that movie, and I remember liking it as a kid when I watched it. And also not knowing what it's about at all. Like just thinking back now, I'm thinking, what was the plot of that movie? I really have no idea, but it was definitely a good one. So I like the recall of Total Recall there, Danny.
Yeah, definitely. The woman that had an additional breast. Do you remember that scene? That one might have scarred me for life. I don't know, because I think I was young when it came out, but that's the lasting image from Total Recall.
Literally the only thing I remember about that film was what you just referenced right there. That's my memory of it as well.
Scarred us all. Danny, the plot line for the Big Ten, we finally get to see the top teams face off starting this weekend with Ohio State and Penn State. The conversation with us has been for Penn State and James Franklin and the makeup of this defense, if not now, when? Because the top of college football for in large part is down a bit. It's still good. There's parity, but it's not as dominant as one would expect. At least we haven't seen Michigan face off against some top talent. What do you make of the matchup, and is Penn State ready for this moment?
I totally agree with the assessment. If not now, when? For a couple different reasons. One, you've got your defense is one of the best defenses in the country. You've got a quarterback that for the first time feels like he's a difference maker. Now, we haven't seen that version of Drew Aller yet, but he's been as good as advertised, I think, to this point. He hasn't been tested quite yet. And then on the flip side, Ohio State just feels vulnerable, right? I know they've taken care of business, but they just haven't looked the same way that they have in the years past when they have this explosive offense, which hasn't been as explosive. They've been kept in check for the most part this season. Kyle McCord, first-year starter, like he made the one nice drive against Notre Dame, which was great, and he's playing good, but he's not clearly ready, or he's not now at the same level of play where C.J. Stroud and Justin Fields had this offense. So Ohio State feels vulnerable, and I say that, of course, on a scale of Ohio State, right?
Sure. Oh, absolutely.
Where, so I don't want to I can just hear Buckeye fans getting, what are you talking about? They're not the same as they've been in the past. They might be at the end of the season, but this will go a long way of showing us what these two teams are made of. So I totally agree with you. This is the opportunity for James Franklin to get over that hump where he's had such little success against the Buckeyes. This is the opportunity where it feels like this is your moment to potentially get that win against the top 10 team on the road, which he has massively struggled against.
Danny, Jimbo Fisher won a national title at your alma mater. So you're the perfect person to ask. What is going on with Jimbo Fisher? When you know the job that he did at Florida State, could you see the possible personality quirks or whatever's gone on where it just has not resonated in College Station for whatever reason?
So I think Jimbo, if you go back and look at his records and you look at his numbers, when he didn't have Jameis Winston and when he did, there's a pretty glaring difference. So I think that's been what's missing. And I would say this is a Texas A&M problem, or look at Kevin Sumlin's numbers with and without Johnny Manziel. At a program like Texas A&M, when you're trying to compete against the likes of Alabama and LSU and Auburn, when they're good and all the talented teams that are in that SEC West, you have to have a generational quarterback, a true difference maker in order to get it done. And I think that's what they've been lacking. I really do. And it's hard to simplify it to one position, but this year Connor Wegman goes down and, all of a sudden they're playing with Max Johnson, who's good, but not great. And then you sort of get exposed, and the margin for error is so slim in that position that you get exposed. I am truly torn of what to tell. Like, if I had a distressed Aggie fan, which feels like the entire fan base is right now, like, what do we do? Do we move on? And if you have the luxury of having somebody that cuts a check for $77 million, then we can have that conversation, which it feels like Bruce Feldman of Fox is reporting that they have the people, that they've got the funds. If they want to make that move, they can go ahead and move off Jimbo Fisher. But is that the right move? I don't know, 6 years in, you're getting very similar results. I am always one that's a little bit behind, a little bit late to the let's fire the coach party. I would say culture. Let's see what the rest of the season looks like. Let's see if they can get 8 or 9 wins. Let's see if they can get to that point, and then revisit the conversation. If it falls off and you see players throw in the towel and they kind of come limping in the finish and it's 7-5 or worse, then I think the writing is on the wall for you. But I would just say, let's see how the team kind of galvanizes. Do they rally around their head coach, knowing all the pressure that he's under, or do they throw in the towel? That to me is what I would be looking for. But he's won championships, right? Whether he was a head coach at Florida State, assistant coach at LSU, he's won championships, so he's proven to do it. But to me, it is that he needs that quarterback to kind of put him over the hump and make up some of the deficiencies.
Let's say Brock Bowers is out for the remainder of the regular season. Is Georgia a college football playoff team if that's the case?
Without Brock Bowers?
Without Brock Bowers.
Yes. I think their schedule is still very manageable without him. Now, this is a player who I think you could make a case is the most valuable player of that offense for the last 3 years, right? Because even with Stetson Bennett was great the last year he was there, the second national title, but Brock Bowers has been the consistent weapon that's been on that side of the ball. So it is definitely a tough loss. But I know there's some Georgia fans and even, apologists that are saying, well, our schedule's looking a lot tougher now than it did at the beginning of the year. Feels eerily similar to when it felt like Kentucky was going to be a test, right? Like, ooh, Kentucky's in the top 25. They just beat the Florida Gators. And then Georgia just put their foot down and, put up a 50 burger on them. And you saw the disparity. Same thing with Missouri, Ole Miss, like some of the teams that are left on their schedule. I still think Georgia will be fine. So I think they're a playoff team, but where I think it hurts them the most is for the national, going for the three-peat. That's the difference. That's where I think they need Brock Bowers back healthy as a weapon to get that third national championship. But I didn't think they were that with him. So I guess, does it make a difference in the bigger scheme of things? I think it makes them a better team, but even with him, I still don't think they're a national championship team this season.
Mr. ACC now, Danny Cannell. I got to ask you an ACC question.
Let's go.
Is it time to get serious about North Carolina as a college football playoff national championship contender? They're undefeated. Their remaining games, Virginia at home, at Georgia Tech, the Campbell Camels at home, Duke at home, at Clemson, at NC State, before a possible ACC championship game. Should we get serious about the North Carolina Tar Heels possibly going on a college football playoff run?
Yes, I think so. Their schedule, as you mentioned it, I think they'll be favored in every game down the stretch. And one of the most important factors that, is why I believe this is because Drake May is that guy. Like, it's Caleb Williams, and it's interesting because what happened against for USC against Notre Dame, the 3-interception performance from Caleb Williams, I'll be very curious to see if that changes any of the narrative. And I felt guilty of this too. Like, oh, it's Caleb Williams and then there's a gap. I'm mad at myself for falling to that because a lot of the weaker competition he's faced, and he is special. I still think he's one, but I think Drake May is making the case for 1B, and that he is in that same conversation. That the debate should be very deep about just who's going to have the better NFL career. So you've got him. You added Tez Walker after they already got through the first month of the season against some pretty tricky opponents in South Carolina, Minnesota, Pitt. Like, they made it through a pretty tough gauntlet. And not only did they make it through it, they're the only team in the country that's made it through consecutive 5 Power 5 conference opponents in a row, winning by 2 touchdowns or more. Like, they have been dominating those opponents in those Power 5 matchups, and their defense is better. Like, they're not world beaters, but Gene Chizik in year 2 has improved on the defensive side of the ball, as that was evident in the second half of that game against Miami. So yes, I do think they are a playoff contender, and it's somebody that means they'd have to go through Florida State. But I think they'd be a really good matchup for Florida State, and I think they could beat Florida State. Would I say it's probably 3 or 4 times out of 10? I think Florida State would have the advantage. I think Florida State would be the favorite, but I think North Carolina absolutely is capable of beating Florida State.
Florida State, a 14.5-point favorite this weekend against Duke. Danny Cannell with us. I'm curious from the FSU perspective, where would and there's a lot of football to be played, 6 games left on the schedule before the conference championship. Where would the ACC champion rank with the other champions from the conferences? Because I feel like this year more than ever, the conference championship games are going to carry a lot of weight. Who's the one conference champion that you worry about the most that could either jump FSU or keep FSU at 5 and not 4?
That's a good question. I think, like usual, I think it'll work itself out where we won't have that type of, if there's 5 undefeateds, but I think there's a very good possibility you could see, a few 1-loss teams in this conversation.
Yep.
I think the resume for Florida State and the fact that they played LSU and beat them. So this is where, as a Florida State guy, it gets weird. And as an SEC antagonist, I have to kind of root for LSU to be good, right? Even though I usually want them to lose, like everybody lose in the SEC, but I need them to win and to look good. And if you're a Florida State fan, you should do the same. They also have the win against Clemson. To your question, I think probably the Pac-12, because I'd love to sit here and say the SEC is vulnerable of missing out. Like if Georgia lost in Knoxville and found some way to win the SEC again as a 1-loss champ, I think their resume would be weak, but I know the perception of the SEC. I think any SEC champion is in. Same with the Big Ten. I think any Big Ten champion is in. Same with the Big 12. Like I feel like a Big 12 team, Oklahoma or Texas. I think if you compared those two, I'd rather be comparing to Oklahoma's resume than Texas's.
Yep.
Because they beat Alabama on the road. Like that's a really good win. So I'd say those ones make me nervous. The Pac-12, as good as they look now, I think that's the conference that's going to get left out. And I hate saying that. We just saw Washington look the part, but they still have a pretty tough gauntlet. And I think they could slip up, and I think they'd have to play Oregon again. I just think Oregon could lose. Like, I still think the Pac-12, you're going to see them start to cannibalize one another down the home stretch. But it does feel like we're going to have some really tough debates coming down the stretch, which makes me, if I was talking to Mike Norvell in Florida State, I would say don't leave any doubt. Run the table, go undefeated, because if you're an undefeated ACC, you don't have to worry about anything. If you're a 1-loss, you don't want to have these debates.
You've got real football adversity now for Colorado, I think, for the first time. Losing at Oregon is one thing. People expected that. No one expected them to lose at home to Stanford, much less blow a 29-point halftime lead in that game. What do you expect from Deion Sanders in Colorado the rest of the way?
Man, I think this is going to get really interesting. I think it's going to get dicey, and I think adversity reveals true character. And we'll find out the character of this team. You saw some of that adversity in the second half of the Stanford game when the defensive coordinator, Charles Kelly, screaming at the top of his lungs. He gets he got a 15-yard penalty on him for yelling and screaming.
Got a technical foul, basically.
Yeah, exactly. You saw players pointing at each other, yelling at each other, talking, yelling at Coach Sanders. Now, I think, is that the worst case? No, because I think we've seen that before. What I do think will reveal the character is, how they rally, how they win. I mean, they're going to be underdogs against every opponent except maybe Arizona at home. And that, to me, seems like the must-win game. And here's the thing. Shadour's been awesome. Arizona has played Caleb Williams, Michael Penix, and Cam Ward, the quarterback at Washington State. Those 3 quarterbacks combined have 57 passing touchdowns. Arizona held them to 1 combined. Like, they are a good defense, which I think they can shut down Shador and company, or at least hold them in check. And everybody and their brother has been able to score on Colorado's defense. So I think there is if you said, is there a greater chance that they'll get to 7 wins or lose out and be a 4-win team? I would say there's a greater chance they lose out and they're 4-8, which all I kept thinking, and this was kind of like, I've been pegged as this Deion hater. I think he's done a great job. I don't have any problem with Deion. I don't have any problem with Shador or Shiloh. My problem was really with Deion's son, who came at me like for questioning them and criticizing them, and the bandwagon Colorado fans who are obnoxious. It's like they've never watched college football. So they really believe that this, you got to believe that this was a Pac-12 champion. That was never the case and never should have been the conversation. And yet it was forced to that place. And so all the celebrating of this is already a success. I mean, how many times did you guys hear that? This is already a success because they beat TCU. I would say wait and see how this thing plays out. If it's 4-8, are we sure it was a success like everybody thought it was? I mean, we have to see that play out. And I don't know, but I thought we got way out of our skis with the Colorado conversation early because of the hype train, the attention, which was fun and it's good for college football. But we've seen this story unfold a zillion times in college football as well. Remember when Mississippi State was number 1 in the playoff poll? We've seen teams overhyped and excited, which is fun, but you have to realize the reality of the situation that Colorado is very much in a rebuild year.
Danny Cannell has been our guest, courtesy of betonline.net. Check out all the college football week 8 lines and much more there. Thanks so much, Danny. We always enjoy this, even live from the golf course, man.
Yes. It almost feels more like Back to the Future when Michael J. Fox's hand kept going in and out. Remember when the history was wrong? Yeah. So that's
changing
what it feels
history.
like.
Yep.
But you guys are the best, man.
Yeah,
Always love
Danny.
coming on.
Thanks
with
so
you.
much. Same
All right.
here. Love having
See
you.
ya.
There's Danny Cannell. Stay tuned. We've got Kurt Schilling just around the corner. Hot Mike with Head and Withrow rolls on.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafty flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation. And pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Taste of a Southern legend.
6th and Peabody are located with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Glad you're with us. Hot Mic with Honey Withrow rolls on across
We're
the
back,
OutKick
baby.
Network.
We are back.
You know who else is back? Kurt Schilling.
There he is
back. He joins us. You can check out the Kurt Schilling Baseball Show at OutKick.com. Kurt, great to have you back, man. I hope things are well.
Been too long, gentlemen. How are you?
Wonderful. Hope the same is for
Good.
you. Playoffs have been great based on what we saw in the regular season. And we get now the Rangers and a look at Max Scherzer, who returns to the mound. I know you've been critical in the past of his ability in clutch moments, at big moments, spotlight moments. What do you make of the return coming back from the injury?
Well, I think I haven't been critical, I think, as much about his big spot moments as I have been about his availability.
Okay.
You know, the stiff neck and the tired arm and stuff. And it's always a challenge to talk about or question somebody's physical injuries or capabilities. I mean, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, no doubt. And I love to watch him pitch, but October's, I always felt like a month of no condition. It doesn't matter unless you're crippled or unless you're broken, you play. And there's been a couple times in the past where he hasn't taken the ball because of a stiff neck, and I can identify with all of the things he's done and talked about as far as those things go. But you're talking about so couple things. October, there's no kind of settle in period for a starter. And that, you go out and feel your way through the winning runs on at the plate when the game starts. I mean, that's the way I always looked at an October start, because listen, I'm not going to give up any runs. And if I give up one, that's it kind of mentality. And he's had his moments in October, and he could certainly have his moments tonight. I don't know. I have no idea what to expect. I don't know what the leash is going to be. They're up 2-0. So that's going to definitely put the manager in a very different situation as far as how much rope he lets him have. But I'll be curious to see, because I don't expect him to be sharp, but he may come out and be as sharp as he's ever been. October really changes the way people act and react. And so, and you've got a team that's literally a cornered rat. They're down 2-0. They go down 3-0. For the most part, it's over. They're not the 0-4 Red Sox. So I'll be curious to see. I have literally no idea what to expect.
Speaking of the 0-4 Red Sox, we just surpassed the 19-year anniversary of your Game 6 performance that forced the Game 7 winner-take-all whenever you pitched on the dislocated ankle tendon. And what was it? One run allowed on 7 innings. Is that right?
Yeah.
And you mentioned
damn 2-0 fastball to Posada.
Okay.
Or Bernie Williams.
When it left your hand, what'd you think?
Home run.
Oh.
That's playing in Yankee Stadium. Yeah, I believe it or not, more time, and I gave up a lot of them. You kind of knew when the ball left your hand.
Yes. And I'm going back to Scherzer here, and you mentioned, like, if you're alive, you got to take the mound in October. How quickly, Kurt, will you know, watching him on the mound, if he's got it or not? How soon? How much time? How much time does it take the manager to figure it out?
I'll have an idea probably within 5 to 10 pitches. It's very, very easy. I mean, and I said the other day before the Arizona-Philadelphia game, if you're a fan watching at home and you want to understand, there's good misses and bad misses. When a guy's throwing on the inside corner and the catcher is sitting there with his, let me get my hand in the screen here, and the catcher's sitting there with his hand like this. If you see the catcher's elbow as he catches the ball, that's a big miss, right? Because to see the catcher's elbow, he's got to go across the plate or he's got to go this way with a miss. Though that's kind of how I'm looking at command. I think I've said it on the show before, control is the ability to throw strikes. Command is the ability to manipulate the ball inside the strike zone. You have to have command in October. It's why I think we've seen less than stellar relief pitching across the board, because so many throwers are now in the bull. It's all about velocity for bullpen guys as opposed to command. Keith Folk threw 87 miles an hour, but he dominated. It felt like he threw 50 innings in October, but he had such command of his fastball and his changeup. So that's what I'm watching when I'm watching. It's like watching Zach Wheeler. You knew 3 pitches in, Zach Wheeler was going to be electric. And as a pitcher, you kind of see those things. So I would tell you, just kind of watch the misses, the fastball misses more than anything. If he's missing, when you go, I always say to a young pitcher, if you're going to pitch in, if you don't throw a paint strike, drill the guy in the back or break his bat, it's a useless pitch because hitters react. If you get beat on an inside pitch, you change your approach to not get beat on that pitch. You're then giving away the outside corner. To exploit that, you have to have command of your fastball. And I think you'll see very quickly whether he has command or if he's just kind of wild inside the strike zone.
Kurt, let's go back a little bit before we go forward in terms of what's coming up in the postseason. Division series, the higher seed goes 1-3 over the division series. The topic of conversation becomes, okay, maybe time to reevaluate the 5 days off for some of these teams going into a playoff series. Do you look at that and think that, or do you think this is what's great about the postseason? Or that the lower-seeded teams can win series like this?
First of all, the break is what you make it. It's absolutely unequivocal what you make it. I mean, while this isn't the NFL and 5 extra days off is a godsend for a guy like Christian McCaffrey, in baseball it can be. You have to understand how to do it. And I don't care how many scrimmage games you play. I don't care if you pump crowd noise in. It's not live baseball. And so each player has to figure out how can I, on Monday, how can I best be ready on Saturday? And for some guys, that's, hey, I'm going to sit on my butt for 4 days and rest and get my hammy, up and blah, blah, blah. Other guys, they want to take 1,000 swings a day to keep that swing and keep that groove. Pitchers, same thing, throw a couple bullpens here and there. And that, that speaks to experience, right? You guys, a lot of times you talk about, they've never been here before. There are certain times where being there before actually makes a big difference and understanding you've had days off. I mean, the Dodgers have no excuse, right? They've won 9 straight division titles. They've had layoffs before. They understand how the layoffs work. This didn't shock anybody. If getting rest makes you worse, then you suck. I mean, that's it. I mean, so it's I think that's almost entirely mental. There might be, 5 or 10 minutes of getting the juices flowing, but I mean, 60,000 people on their feet, your adrenaline's going, you're good to go. The better team, I think the better team always wins in October. The better team.
You've been around some special teams in your day. When you watch this Phillies team, an organization you know a lot about, do you get that same sense of we're watching something special here?
Yes. Yeah. I've actually I've been texting. I texted Mr. Middleton, the owner, a couple times. I had a chance to get to meet him a couple months back. What a fantastic guy. And it's funny to watch what puts an owner on edge as opposed to a player. He texted me the other night when I think it was nothing going into the 5th of that first game. And I said, listen, your October players they have some October players. Bryce, I think Zach Wheeler as well. Obviously, Kyle Schwarber's very comfortable.
Castellanos, it's on a tear.
Yeah, no, but yeah. Here's the thing, though. I've been on teams that I felt like were teams of destiny that lost. The 93 Phillies. I mean, that team, if I've ever been on a team that was a team of destiny, it was that we were supposed to win the World Series because of how amazingly special that was. And then we played against the team of destiny in 01 against the 2001 Yankees with 9-11 and the world rooting for New York. And it doesn't work that way. I mean, as much as you'd like to think the team of destiny wins, it oftentimes doesn't. I don't know that they're a team of destiny. I just think they're a team that's not going to be denied. Their whole lineup is hitting. They've got the two things that I think you need, which is the two ones. You got Wheeler and Nola, who can go 7 scoreless against any lineup. The question will be, and I think it's going to be Philly and Texas. The question will be, will the Phillies pitching be able to shut down both of those are very deep lineups. If you look at the contributions, the bottom of the order, I got to tell you, the Texas young players are not even remotely resembling young players. They're looking like stalwarts and veterans, and that's a big thing, and it bodes well for the future.
And the Diamondbacks may hear this and be like, "Well, we don't buy into that," but they have to have doubt, right? They see it too. Meanwhile, the Astros won't feel that doubt, knowing where they've been. You say act like you've been there before. Right. They certainly have, and the Scherzer decision may open the door for the Astros to wake up a bit, couldn't it?
Absolutely. It could go the other way, right? I mean, they could knock him out in the first inning and score 6 and be back in this. It's 2-1. That changes everything. I mean, this is the game, right? If the Astros are going to win this, or have a chance to win the series, they have to win tonight, in my opinion. The Diamondbacks. Listen, I've been in a Diamondbacks-like clubhouse. They think it's their year, and maybe it might be. They're going to have to find an incredibly rare mix of things to have happen, but they could do it. I think they have one of the 3 or 4 best players in the game in Corbin Carroll. I was a little disappointed to see Gallen not answer the bell. Kelly didn't either. But I think that's more attributed to the hot bats of Phillies than it is for those guys not doing it. But here's the thing I would tell you. It's the same thing I told on my show about Oriole fans. And it doesn't make you feel any better. But the fact of the matter is the Diamondbacks weren't supposed to be here. They're here a year early. I believe they have the ability and the capabilities to be an extended participant in postseasons going forward, because I think they have tremendous young talent. But they're playing on house money. Again, the players don't think that. They believe they're world champion caliber club, and that's what you want them to believe. But as a fan watching and looking in, you can look around that roster and see, well, this is kind of lacking, and you got to do this. But if you're going to come back, you got to have Gallen and Kelly throw zeros. I mean, the other thing is, and I think we may see it tonight. I thought that Lovello overmanaged Fat in his first start. I think he went into the 5th inning with 52 pitches or 49 pitches, and he was throwing a shutout. And they kept showing Lovello, and you could tell he couldn't wait to get him out of the game. And the second he gives up a hit, he runs out there and pulls him. And Fat's not the normal guy you expect to succeed in October. He's a contact guy who relies on his defense, and that generally doesn't parlay into success in October. But he was throwing exceptional. I would be fearful of that tonight if I'm an Arizona fan, over-managing to the point of trying to get to the bullpen really quick because we're in the 4th inning and we got a 1-0 lead, and he just gave up a double. That was what I said at the beginning of the series. I was fearful of that being the thing that ended up getting them beat. I hope it doesn't, because I want to see that series go 7, because both those teams are fun to watch.
Pretty remarkable run for the Astros. 7 straight ALCS appearances. Great consistency from them. Crazy to see that team. You think down 0-2, losing the first 2 at home, it's over. But the Astros with a losing record at home throughout the season. I don't know that I've seen that before. And being that good away from Houston, something to watch now moving forward in the series.
Well, there's no banging garbage cans for sure at home, right?
That's true.
I mean,
no electronic devices also underneath the jersey.
No, we joke about it, but it's going to stick with them forever. I mean, and deservedly so. But, it's funny that we jump on 18 innings of baseball to talk about the status of a team. I mean, in October you can, and but they've won 7. They've been in 7. And this year was odd because they did it on the final day of the season. They've been playing playoff baseball for a month now, which is why if I'm an Astro fan, I'm not particularly scared or worried. I think they're going to come out and find a way tonight if I'm an Astro fan. And I think the players believe that as well. They know what they have cut out for them. The key is going to be their starter. It's Javier. They have to get solid 5, 6, 7 innings out of their starter. And by solid, I mean 6 or 7, 1 run, no run, scoreless outing for them, I think, to have a chance to win.
Curt Schilling. Check out the Curt Schilling Baseball Show, available now at OutKick.com. Curt, appreciate the visit, man. Glad you jumped on today. And here's hoping we get a World Series that will be competitive like the regular season was.
I don't think with these 4 I don't think with these 4 teams there's a possibility of anything else.
Good.
Because I think you have really good offenses, but you have some pitching on all 4 clubs that can neutralize a lineup. And the key is actually going out there. I think you're going to see a Phillies World Championship, and I think it'll probably end up being a 6 or 7 game series against Texas.
Good.
Which would be fun.
Yeah, that's all I want is a deep series, eyeballs on the product, and the moment. I want to see someone come through. That's what happened this season for me. I'm back in on a more a consistent basis than what I have been in regular seasons. I haven't been in the postseason to this point.
Yeah, a lot of people are, and that's a good thing.
Yep. Curt, always great to have you on, man. Thank you.
Take care, guys. Always a pleasure.
Same to you.
Appreciate it, Curt.
Curt Schilling. Again, check out the Curt Schilling Baseball Show at OutKick.
It definitely feels like the Phillies. It's their year. But Curt brings up a great point that 2001 is a terrific example of, boy, the Yankees are going to do it, given everything around 9/11 and everything else. And he was on the Diamondbacks team that beats them in the World Series. Everyone points Not to the, I think 09 was the year, the Phillies World Championship team. They point back to 1993 when talking about beloved Phillies teams that didn't win the World Series. So you never know, but I see Bryce Harper, Castellanos.
Oh, they're raking.
The way these guys are playing,
And then the
those are
pitching,
some
too.
big-time clutch players.
Yeah. Yep. Coming up, plenty of headlines to hit. We've got a trade in the NFL that involves one of the top teams in the AFC and another one trying to make the postseason. Details there. Plus, Chad with thoughts, big opinion on Clemson, and a message for Tigers fans. That's next on the Hot Mic with Hunt and Withrow across the OutKick Network.
I'm here at the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix, but that's not the only big race that's on people's minds. Let's go talk about it.
There's no way Biden can win again. There's just no way. Even the people that voted for him because they didn't like Trump now at least have to see like senile, not all there. Probably won't be alive for 4 more years.
Are you a Trump guy? Or are you a DeSantis guy? Or someone else?
I don't like any of them.
Who's your dream candidate? Who would you want to run?
Myself. I think the best candidates probably are smart enough not to run.
I just hope there's somebody that's young enough to care about the country instead of their politics.
My fear is they get Gavin Newsom from California. And I think it would be the new cool vote for the younger people, and that's what I don't like.
Who do you think on the Republican side would be able to take on Gavin Newsom?
Great question. As a Republican registered, I love what Trump's body of work did, but they're just out to get him and destroy him, and we won't get things done, which is crappy for me to say. I thought DeSantis was going to be the guy. Trump only has 4 years left. He cannot fix everything that just happened in 4 years. And he's going to be battling indictments and all these false stuff for the next 4 years. We won't get anything done. And it'll just be the stalemate in America. That's why I almost don't want him in. But if he is the leading candidate, that's who I'm going to vote for.
Is there any Democrat that you would vote for, consider voting for?
Absolutely not.
What about RFK Jr.?
No.
Who should our first female president be?
Michelle Obama, of course. Yeah.
I'm going to go with Harambe 2024.
We have the 2024 presidential race coming up, and I wanted to see who you thought your favorite TV characters would vote for. Homer Simpson, like who do you think he would vote for?
Donald Trump, all the way.
Vito Corleone.
Whoa. Whoever advances the cause of the Corleone family. Yeah.
Tony Soprano. If Tony Soprano is voting in the 2024 election, who do you think he's voting for?
I'm going to go Ron DeSantis.
Okay, why do you think that?
Just seems like a Ron DeSantis kind of guy.
Is this a meatball joke that you're trying to make right now? What about Homer Simpson?
Homer would vote for Biden because he's a dope.
Who do you think Napoleon Dynamite would vote for?
That's a good question. I actually don't know.
There's a right answer here.
He's voting for himself or Pedro. There's a Viking show, I think.
Okay.
Maybe that's Hulu. I don't know.
So in the Viking show, whatever the main character is, who do you think they would vote for in 2024?
Probably a goat or a dog.
I think we have one of those in office right now. So who do you think Jon Snow would vote for in this upcoming election?
I'm going to say Donald J. Trump.
Why do you think so?
Because Game of Thrones is all about drama, and Trump comes with the drama, baby.
Would you vote for Trump from jail?
Yeah, probably. Because at that point, what else do you have to lose?
Okay, would you vote for Trump from a jail cell?
Hell yeah, baby. I will get Trump out of jail.
Would you vote for Trump in jail?
Oh, yeah.
Based as
The thing that Trump needs to remember is there's another political figure that said, I don't recall very well.
Yeah.
And that's all he's got to say.
Is there like a dream candidate, someone that you think could like save us all?
Yeah, Jesus.
Amen to that.
Our thanks to you for tuning in to Hot Mic with Hutton with Row today, Wednesday edition. Jam-packed guest list today. Davey Hudson and company. Matt McCoy doing a great job with that. Jam-packed today, Chad. Entire crew here in Nashville.
They do an excellent job every single day here on the show. Love our home here at 6 and Peabody with Old Smoky Moonshine Yeehaw Beer. And, we're just, plugging along, getting it done.
That's right. Trevor Lawrence is optimistic about being the quarterback for the Jaguars tomorrow, Thursday Night Football, Jacksonville at New Orleans. Jacksonville will be traveling today. Lawrence is making that trip.
It's tough to not be optimistic when you have hair like that.
Yeah.
About everything, not just your injury status, just life in general.
Browns are not optimistic about Deshaun Watson playing this week on the road in Indy. He's saying there's no timetable for his return due to a rotator cuff issue in his throwing shoulder. Meanwhile, Jalen Ramsey, should have mentioned this about the Jags. Jalen Ramsey back on the practice field today, and a big trade. Big in terms of what it could be as far as impact for this offense. Mecole Hardman of the Jets traded back to Kansas City. The Chiefs are in dire need of help for that offense with Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. They get it with a familiar teammate who jumps right back into the mix. There was some discussion, Chad, of possibly DeAndre Hopkins being on the trade discussions for Kansas City. Of course, he's been mentioned in KC going back to this offseason where it was thought that they would be in the mix for a trade for his contract. They were not. Ends up that he's on the open market. You've got New England and Tennessee as the two real buyers. And now with going into week 7, would they get help with Hopkins at this point? They don't, at least not yet. They get their help with a guy who knows the offense and can jump right in to the mix, and Mecole Hardman. It's a good trade for KC, and I believe it's just a swap of some late-round picks, including a 6th-rounder, that the Jets will get in return.
That would be quite the upgrade from a postseason outlook standpoint for one Hopkins.
Oh, yeah.
For DeAndre Hopkins.
Well, he claimed that he wanted to go to a playoff contender. Again, we'll see. I don't know what the return on that would be for him with a playoff contender, what they could give up for the Titans to want to make that trade by the deadline. The Titans, by the way, on a bye week in week 7. Chad, Clemson fans, a message for Tigers faithful right now.
So Dabo Swinney got himself into a little bit of trouble because on his radio show, his coach's show, which this is always where the best material comes from,
is.
Right? Someone calls in and complains, and you get the off-the-cuff or emotional response from a coach, which is always good.
Yep.
Dabo Swinney said on his radio show, quote, "We're at a point in our time, and I hate that, where people, if you don't go undefeated, they'll say you're losers. You're terrible." And it's just such a terrible mindset. And honestly, maybe we need to lose a few games and lighten up the bandwagon. Sometimes the bandwagon can get a little too full. Talking about Clemson and the bandwagon of Clemson fans. I agree with what he's saying. We are at a point in time, and I think where too many people immediately fall off the cliff and you lose a game or two, and it's, everything's over. You're a loser. Your program isn't relevant, and time to move on. There's a little bit of that going around for sure. So, Clemson fans are upset about this. Dabo Swinney saying the bandwagon needs to lighten up and all. Here's what Dabo Swinney is saying to Clemson fans. I'm going to peek into the mind of Dabo Swinney, who understands the program that he inherited in 2008 and the history of that program. There is a saying that is very familiar with a lot of people. Don't cry because it's over. Smile because it happened. This saying has been attributed to Dr. Seuss, Theodore Geisel himself. I have done some research on this.
Okay, good.
And going to the website quoteinvestigator.com, they have found that the actual author of this saying is Ludwig Jakubowski, the German poet in 1899, who in a German poem wrote, "Don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened." This is the message from Dabo Swinney and from me right now to Clemson fans. Because, and this is going to be bracing and difficult to hear for Clemson fans, you are not what you've been since Dabo Swinney has been there, historically. This is an outlier. This is not the rule. And I have statistics to back that up. From 1978 to 2008, and keep in mind, Danny Ford won a national title at Clemson in 1981. One of the 3 that you've won historically. The other 2 won by Dabo Swinney himself. Those 30 years, 78 to 08, Clemson won 65% of their games. One national title. That was the best era of Clemson football in their history up to 2008. Now, from 2008 to the present day, Dabo Swinney as head coach, you've won 80% of your games, including 2 national titles. That 15% increase from 65% to 80% is seismic. That's gigantic. And that's what Dabo Swinney has done. This is a great program. It's been one under Dabo Swinney. But here is the return to what you are, Clemson. You're really good, you're not great. And that is what Dabo Swinney is warning you about. Longtime Clemson Tiger fans understand this. If you're over the age of 40, you understand that Clemson Tiger football has been Tommy West football in the past. It's been Tommy Bowden football in the past. It has not been Trevor Lawrence and Deshaun Watson and national championships and being in the mix for a national title every year or winning every single ACC championship. It's been really good to really good, but not great. That's what Clemson Tiger football is historically. I think what Dabo Swinney is saying, and what I believe, is that it's a return to normalcy for Clemson over the bulk of their history. It's a really good program. It's not one of the elite programs. It's not a great one. It's not one that's going to be in the mix with Nick Saban and Bama and Ohio State and Michigan and programs like this, Georgia now under Kirby Smart. It's not going to be in the mix with those programs year in and year out. It can still be really good. It's an 8, 9, 10-win program a year at Clemson with good resources, good fan base, a chance to win the ACC, all of those things. But it's not nationally elite, and guess what you're not right now? Nationally elite or relevant. And Hutton, I don't see that changing anytime soon. And the fact Dabo Swinney is saying this publicly, that maybe we should lose a few more, sounds like a guy who probably knows they're going to lose a few more this year when you look at the rest of their schedule.
And knows, but here's the thing. Moving forward, Clemson's a part of a 12-team playoff. So I don't write them off from the final tournament year in and year out. They're not going to fall to the 13th best program in the country that fast. They can be on par with the 12th best team in the country.
They can be. I don't think it's a given that they are.
But they what they are is a quarterback away from doing that. I mean, the dominance that Clemson and Alabama were a part of, I think we'll appreciate down the road more than we did in the moment. Because before there was Georgia, there was Clemson. And, you know, I don't see Kirby Smart letting his program backslide. And
well,
in the meantime, you know, Dabo, who had a top 3 in the country program year in and year out, is now, you know, hearing about, you know, a handful of losses over the last couple of years and knowing that they're pointing back towards a handful of losses this year. And the criticism is something that he's not used to.
I think the pendulum has swung with this program, and I'll tell you why. I don't know how many more 5-star quarterbacks they need to get it right because it hasn't worked with the last 2. DJ Uiagalelei didn't work out. He's much better right now at Oregon State after transferring. So they get rid of the Clemson-born and bred offensive coordinator, bring in Garrett Riley, and that's supposed to fix everything with another 5-star guy in Cade Klubnik that everyone thought the world of, and it's not really working out with him and the offensive coordinator.
And they lost their continuity.
And
continuity of the coaching
and the
staff.
common denominator here is Dabo, who has been terrific at Clemson. And I'm not trying to argue that he should be in danger or anything. And I, in fact, agree with what he's saying here. I can see the writing on the wall that this is a program in decline. They're not going to bottom out. They're going to be okay. I just think the time has passed of that window where they were, you know, from 2015 to 2021, where they were every bit as good as name any brand name in college football.
It was them and Bama.
And big-time coach. They were just as good as all those programs.
Yes, that was it. And that was when Bama was going into their offensive efficiency at an all-time high. And they weren't really known for that quarterback play. And then all of a sudden, they were just rattling them off, too. And so was Clemson. And I look at it from this angle too for Dabo. The 5 stars don't pan out. They didn't pan out for Georgia either. But when you get that guy, you've got to hit on that guy. When you make a quarterback decision that they did, you've got to make sure it's the right one when you turn it over to said player. It could be Klubnik or anyone moving forward. And when you turn it over to him, you can't lean back on the whole, we're anti-transfer, we're you going on another visit once you verbally commit. You got to embrace that to stay where you are. I think that's really the mentality to flip and engage back. And Chad, I think in large part too, I think a lot of the top-tier programs are feeling a certain sentiment closer to Dabo Swinney than we realize.
Yeah.
Saban, Kirby Smart even, life after Stetson Bennett, and now life without Brock Bowers for what is a solid team. They're trying to run the table so they're guaranteed a playoff spot, as crazy as that sounds.
Well, I'm waiting for this parity to bite Kirby Smart in Georgia. They've come close to it, but they haven't lost the game yet. I think this is what,
though.
If you want to point to NIL and transfer portal being this great thing for college football, I do think that there's more coaches like Dabo and Saban coming out and saying, hey, you can't brand us a loser because we lose a game anymore. Right. And the reason for that is this is promoting more parity. It's giving some other programs a fair shake at landing some players, some veteran guys that can come in and transform a team, and it's making it harder on some of these powers.
Yes.
To go undefeated, to run the table. Now, again, Georgia's the one that's been immune to this so far because they're still undefeated and they've won the last 2 national titles. But I think there's some truth to that. And I think also because of the years and years of success with Alabama, Ohio State to an extent, Clemson, that a loss feels so debilitating because it's so rare for some of these programs.
It's crippling because you haven't dealt with that feeling, right?
Yeah.
Chad, let's wrap up the show with a fair foul. And I don't even know if it's fair to call this fair or foul because I think this is glorious. The Notre Dame fan running onto the field post-game and holding down his 4 fingers and saying, how about your nails now, bro? Let me say these nails now, bro.
To Caleb
Williams, who last year he paints his nails every week. He's been doing that since high school. Last year on the nails, it spelled out F Notre Dame, FND. And this year, well, the fan gets the glorious response. And the detail and planning for this guy while he's filming this on his phone is fantastic. And if you're Williams, just sit there and take it.
Let me see those nails now, bro. Let me see those nails now, bro. Come on.
Get out of here, man.
Ah! We did it. We did it.
Absolutely fair.
One of the new funniest things in the world are college kids running on a field and the bouncing that happens as they're filming themselves in a full sprint after charging the field. I can't get enough of it. The Ole Miss kid who gets decked by the LSU player, hilarious. And then what he yells the players he's running off, amazing for a guy that's just been face planted to the ground. This kid gets all the accolades.
Yes.
This is 1,000% fair. Nothing foul about this. If Caleb Williams hadn't done that the year before, it would be foul. To go and get in his face and to bump up to him and do all that, to start talking foul of the kid, to do that, just let him get off the field.
Yeah.
And you don't have to get in his face and film him and do all that. But the fact that he put FND on his nails, him coming back a year later, remembering it, and saying, what about those nails now, bro?
Beating down the Trojans.
Chef's kiss to this kid. I want to
Bravo.
track him down. I want to get him on Hot Mic. Not only is it fair, it's a young man that I want to interview, possibly for a job. I wouldn't mind hiring this kid because that level of bitterness mixed with pettiness is what I seek in college football fans.
It's our
well
vibe.
Done, sir.
It's
well
what,
done. Yeah.
It's what we're into.
We bang hats. That guy bangs hats. I love that he not only just he found him. He found Caleb Williams so quick.
He got past the security.
It's great.
We'll bang hats again tomorrow, 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern for Hot Mic with Honey Withrow across the OutKick Network.